In the poor, dirty slums of Ebelstein, people called the shabby old man the lying old geezer. He looked weak and sick, like he might fall over any day. Yet he proudly called himself a great mage. No one believed him. He could only do very weak, one-star magic tricks to show off to the local children. He had a bad temper too. He would get angry and yell at kids for playing small pranks on him. One day, in the middle of his shouting, he turned and saw a quiet white-haired boy with red eyes watching him. The boy later learned magic from this crazy old man. It was not for a big destiny or to be a hero. It was a simple deal. The old man wanted someone to listen to him and praise him. And the boy wanted to learn magic. So they stayed together. They sat by the campfire at night. The old man talked a lot, and the boy listened and learned carefully. They stayed through the cold winter until spring came. One day, the boy knelt in the dirt, sweating hard. A swirling blue light appeared around him. The old man watched with his mouth open in shock. He realized this slum kid had truly learned how to control mana. The boy's red eyes glowed brighter. He pushed himself and raised his hand. The energy gathered above him and turned into a huge, glowing blue magical shovel. It flew forward and crashed into a tree. The old man could not believe it. This boy was not just any kid, he had real talent. For the next year, the boy worked as the old man's helper. In return, he became an official one-star mage. One dark, rainy night, the old man was very drunk. Between hiccups, he complained about how unfair the world was. He said noble children beyond the northern wall already reached 3-star magic before they became teenagers. For a poor kid like this boy, he said, reaching that level would take a whole lifetime of hard work, and even then, he might fail. The old man was sure magic came only from noble blood. He told the boy not to dream too big, because he would hit a wall and give up. He was just angry about his own failures. The old man passed out. The boy stared into the fire all night. The next day, the boy came back in heavy rain and found the old man lying face down in the mud, dead. His body was covered in bruises, like someone had beaten him badly. At first, the boy thought the old man got into a fight because of his bad temper. But later, while burying him in the rain, the boy learned the truth. The guards had caught the old man trying to steal a 2-star spellbook from a warehouse. They beat him to death. No one understood why a man with no ambition would risk his life for a book. As the boy stood in the rain, a blue holographic screen suddenly appeared in front of him. The old man always said magic was only for people with noble blood. But that idea was wrong, because this boy was not even from this world. The system asked him to choose his main school of magic forever, no changes allowed. The story jumps forward 4 years. Now the boy is called Derrick. He meets Katia Flameheart, a strong 3-star mage from a fallen noble family. She works as a mercenary for the Beldens group in Ebelstein. She becomes Derrick's new teacher and is much better than the old man. One day in the tavern called Beldens Tier, Katia talks seriously to Derrick. She says it is normal for mages to want more power, and he has real talent to go far. She warns him not to be too greedy, or he will stop improving. Derrick agreed. Stay careful. She teaches him to feel his mana and imagine things into reality. As blue energy swirls around him, Katia sees he has a huge amount of natural mana and very good control from fighting in real battles. Suddenly, Derrick's eyes turn a scary violet color. The mana pressure becomes so strong that Katia looks shocked and worried. Then a huge explosion shakes the whole tavern. People downstairs scream that it is an enemy attack. Derrick snaps out of his deep focus, breathing hard like he just ran for miles. Katia doesn't let him rest. She grabs his wrist tightly and Derrick asks with confusion, "Master?" Katia tells him to stay quiet. She pulls him out of the room and past the confused guards who are running everywhere looking for the cause of the loud boom. Walking to the alley, when they reach a quiet alley, Derrick again asked with confusion, "Master?" Katia turns to him with a worried face. Then said Derrick, "Listen carefully." Derrick still confused. Then she explains the hard truth: nobles are very protective of their power. To them, strong magic is not just a skill, it's a special right they keep only for themselves to stay above everyone else. She says that being born with great power is seen as a gift, but only if you have a noble family name. For a common person, reaching 3-star mage level usually takes a whole lifetime of very hard work. But Derrick is doing it much faster. He's still too young to even have a beard. The big explosion was not a real bomb. It was a 2-star illusion spell called auditory hallucination, a spell that makes people hear loud noises that aren't real. At just 14 years old, Derrick breaks through the wall the old man always talked about. He officially becomes a 2-star mage. The system confirms the change right away and permanently unlocks the new spell for him. For the next year, Katia stays and teaches him many fighting spells. She also shows him how nobles talk and behave. Then she gets big news: she is offered a job as a private magic tutor for House Elvester. This is not a small noble family, even the Grand Duke in the capital has to be careful around them. It is an offer she cannot say no to. It's like winning a golden ticket. Before she leaves, she gives Derrick one last gift, a 2-star spellbook to add to his collection. The system updates his list of spells, things like magic arrow, fireball, and clairvoyance. Derrick closes the book and another year passes. At 16 years old, Derrick has taught himself and mastered 2 more 2-star spells on his own. He has no plans to stop learning. Back at Belden's Tier Tavern, the keeper is shaking with excitement. They got a good job for once, not the usual low-pay work. Derrick asked what kind of request. He tells Derrick it's a direct request from the powerful Grand Duchy of House Duplain. He asks if Derrick understands how huge this chance is. Derrick asks why such a rich and strong family would hire a weak mercenary group like theirs. The keeper calls him silly for doubting it. He says House Duplain has so much money they spend it like water. He grabbed Derrick and said this job could open doors to important people. When Derrick finally calms the keeper down, the job sounds too simple: just kill a few monsters on the edge of their land. The keeper says it's easy money and nobles don't lie. But Derrick doesn't trust it. A Grand Duchy would never hire cheap help for normal work unless something is hidden. He says no and starts to walk out. The keeper begs him to wait. Derrick turned around and said just call someone else. You know I don't take shady jobs. The keeper explains the client asked for a mage specifically, and Derrick is the only mage they know. Derrick still says it's too suspicious and turns to leave again. But the keeper shows him 1 gold coin, the advance payment. Derrick looks at the shiny coin and his doubt disappears. Money talks. He agrees. Derrick meets the clients: a stiff old man with a monocle, a middle-aged woman, and someone hidden under a blue hood. The tavern keeper pushes Derrick forward proudly. But the old man says absolutely not. He is angry. He says they can't give an important job to a kid who hasn't even had his coming-of-age ceremony. He turns to leave, ignoring the keeper's pleas that Derrick is skilled. Just as they start walking away, the middle-aged lady whispers to that old man. They both look at nervously with the hooded figure just and whispers something. The old man stops. His face changes. With a sigh, he turns back, looks at Derrick, and agrees to talk. Soon, Derrick is in Duplain territory testing his skills. A goblin charges at him. Derrick hits it with a blue magic bolt and knocks it back. Before it lands, Derrick's eyes flash red. He moves fast, cuts through the goblin's neck with his sword, and flicks the blood away. Another goblin attacks from behind with a loud roar. Derrick doesn't panic. He steps aside smoothly, slices off the goblin's arm, then turns and cuts off its head in one clean swing. He finishes the last goblin with a strong electric shock. The ground is covered in dead goblins. Derrick turns to the clients calmly and says, "Job done." The old man looks surprised. The hooded figure is clearly impressed and says he cleared the whole group very fast. That night at Belden's Tier, a furious blonde woman named Pelline storms up to Derrick's table. She glares at him and says, "So you became a noble's dog, Derrick?" The keeper tries to pull her away and tells her to calm down. She shouts that commoners should never sell themselves to nobles. The keeper smiles slyly and asks if she knows how much the job paid. Pelline guesses 1 silver. The keeper laughs and says the advance alone was 1 gold. Pelline's anger disappears. Her eyes shine. She gets excited and begs to be allowed to work for nobles too. The keeper yells that begging on knees is not part of the job. At midnight later, Pelline, now calm and dreamy. Keeper asks how the job went. Derrick says it was just a simple goblin hunt. The keeper says the clients looked rich but shady. Derrick's face turns serious. He tells them all 3 clients were lying about who they were. The old man said he wanted youth, energy, and good manners, but he had none of those himself. The woman who said she was a kitchen maid had soft, clean hands, not hands that do hard work. Derrick starts to talk about the trainee inspector, but his eyes glow red, and the keeper stops him. The keeper, whose name is Jaden, says mercenaries don't get paid to ask questions. They do the job, take the money, and move on. Derrick agrees, though he doesn't like it. In this hard world, surviving comes first. The next day, in Grand Duchy of Duplain. Derrick stands in the field full of dead goblins and says the area is now safe. The old man says good work. Jaden quickly asks for the rest of the payment. The old man gives 2 more gold coins. Jaden celebrates, but Derrick stays quiet and suspicious. The old man then praises Derrick's skill and offers a new job, much better pay. Jaden is confused and asks what it is. The old man says 15 gold coins. Jaden almost faints at the number. The old man asks Derrick directly. Derrick looks at him hard and says one firm word: yes. Soon, Derrick and Jaden leave their place and arrive at the huge, beautiful home of the Grand Duchy of Duplain. Derrick is amazed by how big and fancy it is. Jaden also impressed. Before they go in, the old man stops the act. He says his name is Delon, the Grand Steward to the Grand Duke. He apologizes for the trick, it was needed to test Derrick safely. Jaden is nervous and sweating. The woman says she is Katerina, the head maid of the Duke. Jaden tries to bow and greet them properly but stumbles over his words. Derrick puts it together: the dispatch officer was the Grand Steward, and the kitchen maid was the head maid. Their real positions are much higher than he thought. Then the hooded lady stepped forward. Jaden asks the big question: who is the hooded person? The figure slowly pulls down the hood. It's a young woman with long dark hair. Derrick looks surprised. And the lady have bright blue eyes. She says her name is Iseline Eleanor Duplain, the eldest daughter of the Grand Duke. Then she tells the real reason for the job: the goblin hunt was only a test. The true job is for Derrick to become the personal magic tutor for her younger sister, Daila. Derrick feels like the world stopped. He can't speak. The idea is crazy, a boy from the slums teaching magic to a noble lady. Inside the grand residence of the Duplain family, a young man bursts through the door and storms into the office. He shouts at his father, Valerian, the Grand Duke. The boy rushes in, drawing the attention of his father and his blonde older brother. The Grand Duke tells his son Raig to act with dignity in his presence. Annoyed, Raig snaps back that the one who needs dignity is Daila. She supports a maid. A young woman nearby is crying hard because Daila went too far and hurt her. The blonde brother tells Raig to be quiet because they were in the middle of an important talk. But Raig ignores him and continues. He says more than 10 servants have quit in the last month alone. He asks how long his father will keep ignoring that troublemaker. The blonde brother stands up, angry at Raig's behavior, and shouts his name. He tells Raig to stop making a scene and to leave the room. Raig goes quiet for a moment with a serious look on his face. Then he says that even if Daila is useless, they still have Eileen for the family's future. He adds that it's time to get rid of the troublesome girl. The Grand Duke calmly removes his glasses. He says it is not Raig's decision to make. Raig reveals that he has already found a monastery for her. He says sending Daila there would be better for the whole family. Furious, the father suddenly grabs Raig by the head. In one quick move, he slams Raig's head onto the desk. With a cold, threatening look, he pins his son against the wooden surface. Even though he is hurt, Raig speaks again. He says that when the time comes, his father will have to make a choice. The Grand Duke stares at his son with an icy, dangerous gaze. Meanwhile, Eileen and Derrick arrive in the main hall. The girl asks Derrick if he has ever heard of her sister, Daila. Derrick replies that he has seen Lady Daila listed in the Duplain family records. Eileen gives a mysterious smile and says her sister is not well known to the public.
At that moment, the large office doors open. They step inside. There they see Raig with an injured face and his blonde brother Valerian. Valerian greets Eileen warmly and asks how her stay has been. Eileen smiles and says she lived very comfortably thanks to his care. Valerian then says Raig is hurt, so they can talk later. Derrick watches everything in silence with his red eyes. He quietly studies the strange family dynamic. Then his eyes turn and notices the maid who came with Raig. She is crying in a corner of the room. Derrick becomes thoughtful. He tries to figure out what is really going on in this family. Back in the office, the Grand Duke says he is glad to finally meet his daughter's choice. Eileen thanks him and introduces Derrick as Daila's new magic tutor. The family head puts his glasses back on and stares at the white-haired young man. Eileen says they will leave now since he is busy. But before they go, the Grand Duke tells the new tutor to stay behind. Derrick turns around, confused about what the nobleman wants to say. The room becomes tense as the Grand Duke and Derrick look at each other. Calmly, the head of the Duplain family starts writing on a piece of parchment at his desk. He comments that the boy is very young. He asks if Derrick is 16 years old. Derrick answers simply, yes. The Grand Duke asks about his magic skills. Derrick says he uses one-star magic. The Grand Duke smirks and laughs. He says humility is not always a good thing, and he knows the boy is lying. Derrick stays silent, seeing that his lie has been caught. The nobleman releases his powerful aura. Derrick realizes the Grand Duke is a 5-star mage. Derrick apologizes. The Lord says he understands, showing too much talent can sometimes be dangerous. He adds that based on Derrick's clothes and age, he does not look like a typical magic tutor. Without hesitation, Derrick admits the truth, he is actually a mercenary. The Grand Duke says he trusts his daughter's choice. He will allow Derrick to enter the annex of the residence where Daila lives. He dismisses Derrick, but the young man interrupts with one last question. The Grand Duke allows him to speak. Derrick says his duty as a mercenary is to make sure Lady Daila learns magic properly. His mission is to help her enter high society. The Grand Duke asks why Derrick is telling him something so obvious. Derrick then says he has a very serious request to make. The Grand Duke looks intrigued by the boy's boldness. He waits to hear what it is. Meanwhile, in another part of the house, a plate crashes hard against the floor. A maid screams in shock and cowers in fear. The servant apologizes many times, but the girl treats her with complete disrespect. The young noble tells the maid to get out and warns her never to show her face again. In a different room, the guild master asks Eileen why she chose that boy. He says many famous tutors would jump at this job, and it would be hard for a commoner to succeed. Eileen explains that she already tried the best-known tutors, but they all gave up. She decided to look for someone who could use magic and was in a desperate situation. That way, the person would try very hard. Even though Derrick is a mercenary, he seems to understand noble manners and culture quite well. The guild master laughs and says Derrick's old master was a fallen noble who used to be very successful. Derrick must have learned a lot from him. Eileen smiles happily and says, I see. I thought he seemed refined and kind, even for a mercenary. I hoped he could gently guide Dyla and help her behave better. The guild master tells her, you need to learn how to read people better. Eileen looks confused. He explains, Derrick grew up on the streets. He didn't survive by being kind. He survived by being tough. Eileen is surprised by his words and starts to rethink her choice. At that moment, Derrick is walking down a hallway with a butler guiding him. They stop in front of a large wooden door. Derrick raises his hand and knocks twice. He waits for an answer. No one replies. After a short silence, Derrick decides to open the door himself. Inside the room, he greets the person sitting there. He introduces himself as Derrick to the brown-haired girl at the table. The blonde girl, who is Dyla, tells him to come closer. Derrick obeys and walks toward her. Dyla gives a sneaky smile, like she has a plan. Suddenly, she throws something at his face. Derrick can't dodge in time. Dirty, smelly water soaks him completely. Dyla starts laughing loudly. She says she thought a sewer rat had come in. On second look, she says he really does look like one. She grabs a nearby chair to stand on a small table so she can be taller than him. Then she dumps a whole bucket of dirty water over his head. Derrick stands still and silent as the water drips down his face. Dyla complains that she's out of water now and wishes she could humiliate him more. Derrick slowly lifts his head and stares at her with a cold, scary look. Dyla freezes for a moment, shocked by his expression. Annoyed, she kicks him. Derrick kneels in front of her. Dyla gets angry that his dirty shoe touched her foot. She steps on his hand with her shoe and insults him more. She covers her nose and says he stinks from the dirty water. Even after all the humiliation, Derrick keeps staring at her without showing any emotion. Dyla throws her shoe at him, then leans on the table to continue. She calls him a sewer rat again and tells him to know his place. She shows her foot and keeps mocking him. The scene changes back to the earlier conversation in the Grand Duke's office. The head of the Duplain family is looking out the window, thinking deeply. With a serious face, he listens to Derrick's words. Derrick says Dyla's problem is not simple. With his red eyes serious, he makes a bold request. He asks how much authority the Grand Duke will give him to handle her. The Grand Duke stares at the white-haired young man, carefully considering his request. Back in the present, Dyla's face turns red with shock. Derrick has lost his patience. He gives the spoiled noble girl a firm slap. He looks down at her with a cold expression and no regret. Dyla puts a hand to her cheek, unable to believe what just happened. Derrick's red eyes glow as he tells her in a firm voice, "Get up." At that moment, Derrick remembers a conversation from 3 years ago with his master, Katia. Back then, he had asked her what to do with a very stubborn student. Katia answered that she would try to understand the student and treat them kindly. But Derrick thought that sounded too perfect and idealistic. He asked what to do in the worst cases. When nothing works, Katia looked serious and explained if talking fails completely, you need a different approach. She said sometimes you have to use fear to make the student listen. Back in the present, Dyla is still on the floor, shaking with fear after what Derrick did. He looks at her and says calmly, treat other people with respect. Now get up. The spoiled noble girl pushes herself off the floor and stands. She is full of anger. Suddenly, she rushes at Derrick, trying to attack him. She shouts, a commoner like you has no right to touch a noble lady. Derrick loses his patience. He gives her one quick tap to make her stop. Then he says in a firm voice, I won't say it twice. Dyla looks confused and scared, but she doesn't understand. She starts yelling for the butler and accuses Derrick of hurting a noble woman. The head butler and the maids come running. They ask if she is okay. The old butler scolds Derrick and warns him, the Grand Duke will hear about this. Derrick stays calm. He takes out a parchment from his pocket and shows it to them. He explains that the Grand Duke gave him full authority over Daila's education. The butler takes the document and looks shocked when he sees the family's official seal on the paper. The young noblewoman, Daila, is also surprised and confused about what is happening. That night, the Duplain mansion seems calm on the outside, but trouble is not over yet. Daila's blonde brother, Valerian, runs through the halls. Reg, the dark-haired brother, follows him and tries to calm him down. Valerian bursts into a room, yelling and calling for the mercenary he hired. Inside, the white-haired young man, Derrick, is calmly reading a book while sitting in bed. Valerian shouts, "How dare you lay a hand on Daila?" He grabs Derrick by the shoulder and tries to shake him, but Reg holds him back with force. Calmly, Derrick replies, "The Grand Duke himself gave me permission." Reg tells his brother, "Father allowed it." Derrick is a guest of the Islines. Valerian calms down a little. Then he says to Derrick, "Come with me," and tells Reg to stay out of it. Reg speaks to Derrick quietly, "Daila needed this lesson." Valerian won't go too far. Derrick looks at the two brothers with a serious face. Reg wonders why his blonde brother protects that hopeless girl so much. In a dark room, a few old dolls sit on the floor near the door. Valerian invites Derrick to enter his sister Daila's old room. He explains, this was her room in the main house. No one has touched it since she left. Derrick looks around and sees an unfinished painting on an easel. Valerian says his sister loved to draw. She looked cute when she showed her work, but she never finished any drawing, she always left a blank space. Valerian apologizes for getting angry earlier. Derrick tells him not to worry. Derrick asks, "Why did you bring me to this room full of paintings?" Valerian explains that he wanted to show Derrick that Daila does not deserve to be looked down on. She became obsessed with her noble bloodline, and that is why she was sent to the annex. Now Valerian wants to stop the family from sending her to a monastery. He picks up some books. The older brother begs Derrick, "Please save my sister." Derrick notices something in the books and says, "Wait a moment." He looks at the notes written in the margins and says, based on these notes, she has not completely given up on magic. He asks, "Are these books from the School of Regulations?" Valerian confirms they are. Derrick becomes thoughtful. He seems to have a new plan. He looks at one of the landscape paintings in the room. Then he picks up one of the theory books and makes a decision. He says, "I will try my new plan." He hands the book to Valerian. That same night, the annex of the Grand Mansion is completely silent and dark. In her room, Daila is sleeping peacefully in her bed. Suddenly, a bucket of very cold water is thrown on her. She wakes up screaming, with ice-cold water all over her face. Derrick looks at her with cold eyes and asks, "Were you serious about sleeping?" Confused and angry, Daila shouts, "Have you gone completely crazy?" Derrick grabs her arm and says, "We need to go somewhere important." He drags her down the hall. She yells for the servants to stop him under the bright moonlight. Derrick pulls her out of the mansion by force. He drags her along a dirt path, away from the Duplain family home. They reach a quiet, hidden spot. Derrick throws her onto the dirt ground. Daila yells angrily, "Who do you think you are to teach me?" Derrick asks, "Do you want to hear something interesting?" She looks confused. With a smile, he says, "I'm not going to teach you magic. I just enjoy roughing up nobles." Shocked, Daila asks, "What did you just say?" He continues, "Being a tutor is only an excuse for my wicked plans. It's an excuse to deal with nobles like you." He smirks, draws his sword, and says, "The screams of nobles are quite beautiful." Terrified, Daila asks, "Do you think you'll get away with this?" He smiles and says, "Yes. You're going to a monastery anyway. No one would believe you." He adds, "In the worst case, I can just atone with my life. A commoner like me is worthless. Or I can run away. I would be doing your family a favor by getting rid of you." Completely terrified, Daila thinks she is finished if this man catches her. She starts running desperately to escape. She thinks, "I need to lose him in the forest. He will catch me easily in the open field." Daila knows the forest well and plans to get back home through it. But she trips and falls. Suddenly, something catches her eye. A huge fireball lights up the dark night sky. Derrick launches the powerful spell toward the forest. Daila turns around and sees it is a fireball spell. Derrick holds the sphere of fire with a serious, determined look. With a mischievous smile, he shows he is not playing. The powerful fire magic flies quickly toward the frightened girl. The flames reflect in her eyes as the attack gets closer. With a scream of terror, Daila is thrown back by the force of the explosion. A large fiery blast happens right behind her, destroying everything around. She falls to the ground in total panic. The young noble can hardly believe what she just saw. With a frightening smile, the mercenary says, "I missed on purpose." The full moon lit up the night as the chase continued through the dark forest. Daila, the young noble woman, ran desperately to save her own life. Her face showed both fear and a strong will to escape. But in a moment of distraction, she tripped over a tree root. The blonde girl fell hard onto the dirt ground and could not protect herself. Exhausted and lying there, she could barely stand. She stared at what was coming toward her. Suddenly, a bright blue energy arrow shot out at high speed. Derrick, the magic tutor, focused and prepared his next attack without any hesitation. The energy arrow flew right past Delilah as she lay on the ground. She was in shock and could not move after the magic passed so close to her. Derrick praised her movements. He said it was hard to believe she had stayed hidden in the annex for so long. Out of breath, Delilah just stared at him in silence, completely confused. Then she stood up and ran back into the forest. Derrick watched her go with a slight smile. He seemed to have everything under control. Delilah wondered how long she could keep running and whether she would ever escape. Suddenly, she stopped. She had a big realization. Meanwhile, Derrick used his magic on a puddle of water on the path. He looked at the trail in the dark forest that Delilah was following. He realized this was the same forest she had painted. This was where she used to play as a child. He understood that she felt the energy of nature and put it into her paintings. His red eyes glowed. He now knew exactly what was happening. Delilah grew tired of running. She quickly picked up a stone and threw it at Derrick's head to attack him. But Derrick calmly drew his sword and defended himself. With one quick motion, he cut the stone in half easily. Delilah was shocked and terrified by his skill. Derrick praised her for trying to fight back. He said it was not an easy choice to make. Exhausted, Delilah fell to the ground again. She gasped for air with no strength left to fight or run. With a cold look, Derrick said she had no more energy to escape. He pointed his sword at her and asked if she had any last words. But Delilah smiled. She did not seem afraid of his threat. She challenged him and said she would never lower herself like a commoner would. Derrick asked why she was so obsessed with her noble bloodline. Delilah lowered her head in silence for a moment. Then she said that if they took away her noble status, nothing would be left for her. Angrily, she shouted about magic and her failures. With tears in her eyes, she screamed that he did not know how hard she had tried or how many times she had failed. Derrick watched her outburst in silence. She continued, she had failed at magic, at painting, and at everything she tried. Desperate, she asked what else was left for her except her noble title. She fell to her knees and wondered who she was without her social status. Derrick listened quietly and thought about her words, then he summoned a blue energy sword and prepared for the next part of his plan. With tears in her eyes, Delilah seemed to accept what she thought was her end. Derrick raised his blade and said he had heard everything she wanted to say. Terrified, with a red face, Delilah said goodbye and waited for the end. With a quick swing, Derrick moved his energy sword. Delilah closed her eyes tightly, waiting for the final blow. But the blade stopped. Massive ice crystals formed all around her. A thick ice barrier appeared and covered her without hurting her at all. Delilah opened her eyes. She saw the ice crystals everywhere. She looked at her hands and wondered if this was her own magic. Derrick put away his energy sword. His plan was complete. He apologized for being so rude earlier. He praised her hard work. Delilah stayed in shock. She did not understand what had just happened. Derrick explained that it was a natural manifestation of her mana. He told her she did very well. Delilah could not hold back anymore. She began to cry uncontrollably. She screamed and cried, letting out all the frustration she had kept inside for so long. Derrick watched quietly from a distance as she released everything. The full moon shone down and ended that intense night lesson. Derrick told her she belonged to the wild magic school. Delilah looked confused while she bandaged her leg. He explained that different schools of magic have very different ways of learning. Trying to learn the wrong type of magic is like forcing your body into clothes that do not fit. Delilah asked how he discovered she had such a rare magical lineage. Derrick said he saw it in her paintings. The brush strokes were special. She felt the energy of nature and put it onto the canvas. He explained that mages of this type feel natural mana from childhood. That is why she was always different from others. Delilah was in total shock. Someone had finally recognized her hidden talent. She finished bandaging her leg. Derrick said the job was done. She could now walk with less pain, but he warned her, this was only the first step. Real training would begin tomorrow. Delilah called his name as he started walking away down the dark path. Even though she felt embarrassed, she thanked him for his help. Her view of him had changed. Derrick listened in silence without showing much reaction. They began walking back to the mansion together. The moonlight covered the entire forest. During the walk, he commented on her sunset painting. He said it was a complete work of art. The next morning, sunlight came through the bedroom window and filled the luxurious room. Delilah woke up feeling determined. She sat on the bed, ready to test what she had learned. She stretched out her hand and focused. A small amount of blue energy appeared between her fingers. Her eyes glowed with intensity. She tried to use her power naturally, just as he had taught her. But the magic failed. It turned into smoke. Daila felt irritated with the result. A maid walked peacefully through the luxurious hallway, carrying a bucket of water. Suddenly, Daila opened her door fast. The noise scared the maid. The bucket slipped from her hands, and water splashed everywhere on the carpet. The dirty water hit Daila's dress directly. She froze in surprise. The maid became desperate. She apologized again and again, afraid of punishment. But Daila just stared at her with a cold look. She showed no anger. The maid knelt and begged for forgiveness, fearing she would be hit or shouted at like before. Surprisingly, Daila simply said, "Be more careful next time," and walked away as if nothing happened. The maid was in total shock. She wondered why the spoiled girl did not slap her or yell. Other servants came closer. They were curious about the change in the young mistress's behavior. In another room, Derrick slept peacefully, enjoying a rare moment of rest. Suddenly, loud knocking on the door woke him up. He complained about the noise so early on his day off. He opened the door while rubbing his eye. He wanted to know why there was so much shouting. Daila stood there with the butler. She demanded that magic lessons start right now. The butler was shocked. He had seen Daila manifest her mana alone in her room for the first time. With a determined look, Daila ordered Derrick to teach her quickly. She was very eager to improve. But Derrick simply closed the door in their faces. He told them to come back in the afternoon because he wanted to sleep. The butler began to cry with joy. He was happy to see his young mistress finally taking her studies seriously. Annoyed by the dismissal, Daila started pounding on the door. She shouted for him to open it right now. Even with all the noise outside, Derrick went back to bed and ignored the little brat. Daila kept shouting and knocking, "Open the door, you crazy bastard." The sun rose brightly over the huge mansion of the noble family. The sky was clear and blue. Firm footsteps echoed through the luxurious hallways. Two maids spoke in surprise. "Lady Daila hasn't broken a single plate all day." Rumors quickly spread among the servants. Everyone learned that the girl had finally managed to use her mana. The sound of boots grew louder. Reg, the dark-haired young man, stopped near the maids. He asked, "What were you saying about my sister just now?" Meanwhile, in his office, the Grand Duke, the family patriarch, calmly wrote on a parchment with his quill. He called his children to discuss the news about Daila's magical progress. The Grand Duke said it was excellent news. He looked satisfied with his daughter's improvement. But Reg, with his green eyes, said, "It's still too early to celebrate such a small achievement." Irritated, Valerian, the blonde brother, yelled at Reg. "Can't you give your own sister even one compliment?" The father watched his sons argue. He looked serious and attentive from behind his glasses. He remembered all the trouble Daila had caused in the past. He thought they should not cancel her trip to the monastery yet. The Grand Duke stayed silent and continued his work. He quietly thought about the future of his troubled daughter. Time passed. The sun stayed strong, lighting every corner of the vast medieval kingdom. Inside a room, Daila sat with her back turned. She looked like she was pouting a lot. Derrick, the white-haired mercenary, entered. He asked, "Are you pouting about something?" Daila replied, "I'm not just pouting. I'm really angry about everything that's happening." Derrick scratched his head. Acting like a spoiled child won't help. The girl shouted, "It's not a tantrum. It's pure hatred." Derrick said calmly, "Throwing a fit is useless. Things need to happen in the right order to work." Daila screamed again. "I'm not having a fit. I'm just very irritated with you right now." Derrick stared at her with a serious, cold look. He stayed calm. Then he said, "I'm still calling it a tantrum anyway." He left her speechless with his teasing. He placed his hand on the chair and began an important lesson. "From my own experience, using too much mana at once can exhaust a mage's body completely. Resting is as important as training." Daila looked bored. She found the talk dull. Derrick noticed. He asked, "Do you prefer a less boring way to learn?" He remembered the time he used flames and his sword to scare her and show who was in charge. Daila remembered that terrifying moment too. She broke into a cold sweat and felt a chill. She quickly changed her mind. "No, I don't need anything extreme. Let's stick to the normal method." Derrick continued. "Once you master the flow of energy, learning one-star spells will be very easy. The wild school has no strict rules. It focuses on freedom. It's perfect for people who learn on their own." He added, "This style fits your personality very well." Daila looked curious at the sudden compliment. Derrick explained, "Your free spirit works perfectly with this type of magic. Your noble blood helps a lot too." Daila stayed quiet for a moment. Her cheeks turned red as she thought about his kind words, words no one had ever said to her before. She wondered if she really had special talent for magic. Derrick confirmed, creating an ice wall on your first try proves you have potential. She asked excitedly, am I a true genius? He warned her, there's a big difference between having talent and being a real genius. Their conversation continued. Outside the window, Reg watched and listened in secret. He grumbled irritably when he realized his sister was really improving. He looked very dissatisfied. The next day, the sun shone brightly over the mansion. Heavy training continued without stop. Daila ran into the room. She told her master, I can manifest the power, but I can't control the direction of the spell. Later, she interrupted him during his meal. I tried the ice element, but it felt very strange, nothing like I expected. On another day, she chased him through the corridors. She shouted, I feel the energy flowing, but in a completely wrong way. At sunset, Daila found Derrick resting under a tree. She asked, what are you doing here alone? Irritated, she complained, you should be near the annex. Do you think my father gave you that book just so you could be lazy? Derrick replied calmly, the Grand Duke lent me the material so I could study in peace. Daila ignored him. I finally made the mana flow work. Come check it quickly. Meanwhile, Valerian, the blonde brother, looked out his office window. He seemed deep in thought about the family's future. The doors opened. Derrick entered after being called urgently by the future head of the house. Valerian greeted him and asked him to sit. We need to have a serious talk about recent events. Sitting face to face, Valerian asked, how is my sister doing? I'm worried about her behavior. Derrick answered honestly, she has improved a lot, but it will still take time to master basic spells. Valerian revealed, our mother will return from her trip soon. The mood in the mansion will change a lot. The matriarch is a difficult person. Many nobles don't like seeing a commoner in such an important role here. Derrick listened carefully. I'll remember that warning. Is there anything else? Valerian stayed quiet for a moment, choosing his words. Then he stood up. My duty as the successor is to protect every family member and always be honest with them. He sighed. But understanding the human heart is very complex. Reality is never as simple as it looks. Derrick asked, what's your point with all this strange talk? Valerian raised his fist, looking emotional as he remembered the past. With sadness, he said, little Daila doesn't want to play with me anymore like she used to. Derrick watched with a confused expression. Valerian continued, when we were children, she was like a perfect little angel. While Valerian made his dramatic scene, Derrick calmly drank his tea, not reacting much. Valerian asked, is there any way I can win back her affection? Derrick questioned, why are you asking me about something so personal? Suddenly, Daila's voice echoed through the mansion. She shouted desperately, looking for her magic master. Valerian ignored the earlier question. He showed Derrick a handmade doll he had learned to make from a servant. It looked very creepy. He asked, what do you think of my work of art? Derrick looked at the strange toy. Are you trying to curse someone? Upset by the harsh reply. Valerian started crying. He became very sensitive. The scene changed to the outside of the grand residence under a clear blue sky. That day, an elegant woman entered the main hall. She said she had heard very good things about the white-haired young man. With a smirk, she added, they managed to hire a very capable magic tutor for our noble family. She introduced herself. I am Mirella de Duplain. She said she planned to send a beautiful gift to the young man's homeland. Derrick replied, I don't belong to any noble house or any lord's territory. The woman looked shocked. She was startled to learn that her daughter's teacher was just a commoner. When Derrick says I'm a commoner. She didn't believe it and totally shocked a commoner. 1 week earlier, a fancy carriage stopped in front of the huge noble family mansion. Young Aisline spoke to the mercenary named Derrick. She told him she made the right choice by bringing him to her family's land. But now she had to return quickly to Ebelstein for urgent business. She would leave little Daila in his care. The white-haired young man, Derrick, simply nodded and agreed to the job without complaining. The guild leader appeared, laughing. He put his hand on Derrick's shoulder and made a joke about his serious reply. Then he climbed into the carriage with Aisline. Before leaving, he told Derrick, finish the job fast, before trouble arrives. The carriage rolled away. Leaving Derrick alone to handle the complicated noble family, suddenly, Aisline touched her face. She looked worried. She had forgotten to tell him something very important. The guild leader asked what she meant. With a nervous face, she explained, my mother will return next week. I forgot to warn him about her. The bearded guild leader asked if the family's matriarch was really someone who needed such a serious warning. The scene shifted to the beautiful ceiling of the mansion's office. Tension filled the air. Inside the office, Miriella, the mother, became furious. She shouted, "A commoner is really my youngest daughter's teacher." The Grand Duke, the father, stayed calm. He kept holding his quill and asked his wife to lower her voice. But Miriella kept yelling in panic. She said little blonde Daila was the most precious daughter of their noble line. The Grand Duke took off his glasses. He admitted he also disliked putting ordinary people in important roles. Miriella reminded him that all the noble tutors had quit. She asked why they chose someone from the mercenary world. The father explained that good tutors are hard to find. He said the white-haired Derrick came highly recommended by their daughter Isline. Miriella started walking back and forth in the office. She said there must be some basic standard of quality. Then she suggested bringing her brother Flam to teach Daila now that the girl had finally awakened her magic energy. The Grand Duke asked if she really wanted to pull a border commander away from his duty just to be a private tutor. He questioned if she thought running the duchy was a game. Miriella shouted again. She said high society in Everstein was a dangerous battlefield for young nobles. She pointed her finger and said she refused to let her daughter become a joke at her grand debut and ball because of a nameless teacher. At that moment, the big office doors opened. Someone entered and stopped the argument. The blonde son, Valerian, asked his mother to calm down. He said she did not come here just to fight with her husband. Miriella told him to step aside. She said this matter could not be ignored. Then the other brother, Reg, dark-haired, asked slowly if the real problem was whether the commoner actually had the skill to teach Daila. He walked forward while everyone watched him. Reg said having a commoner as tutor was strange, but if the man was skilled, it would not be a big issue. He asked his father to let him test the mercenary himself, in a magic duel. The father told Reg not to bother. He said with full confidence that Derrick was very strong and capable. Reg stared at his father seriously after hearing such high praise for a commoner. Then Reg changed his idea. He suggested testing his little sister's skills instead. He explained, if the teacher was truly good, Daila should have improved a lot in a short time. The father stayed quiet but seemed to think seriously about watching his youngest daughter fight. Reg started to leave the office. His older brother Valerian called after him, asking what he planned to do by challenging an inexperienced child to a magic duel. Reg asked if Valerian really believed the little girl had changed her bad behavior and left her troubled past behind. The older brother said she was still their only sister and family blood should be protected. With an ironic smile, Reg mocked the words, flesh and blood. He showed he no longer cared for her. He shouted that her actions would ruin the noble family's name as soon as she entered high society. Valerian looked worried. He wondered if his brother's hate for Daila had a dark reason. Reg said she was the one who crossed the line first. She should stay hidden in that side building forever. Valerian watched his brother leave. The air in the mansion felt heavy and tense. Soon the argument in the office quieted, but everyone felt unsure about the coming duel. Outside, a small bird sat on a tree branch. A new morning had begun at the grand house. Suddenly, little blonde Daila burst into her teacher's room. She looked very angry about something she just learned. Derrick kept reading his book calmly. He asked why there was so much noise so early. Daila threw an official scroll onto his book to get his attention. With a determined face, she said, if she lost this magic duel, the mercenary would be fired immediately. Derrick stayed calm. He said he already knew the opponent was an experienced one-star mage. The fight would be hard for her. Daila got even angrier. She shouted that he would be fired if he did not take the challenge seriously. Derrick replied quietly, I only do the work I was paid for, nothing more. He added that he had already received a large payment up front, so he did not care much about the rest. Daila was shocked. She asked if her teacher was really serious. 1 week later, the Grand Duchy's flag flew high. The day of the duel had arrived, the training courtyard was ready. The noble family and servants gathered to watch. The Grand Duke walked in with authority, next to his still angry wife. Derrick bowed politely. He announced that the Lord and his group had arrived. He stayed calm and professional, even in front of all the powerful nobles. The father watched Derrick and wondered why the young man seemed so confident. Sitting on his throne-like seat, the Lord thought, someone with this much courage should not be dismissed too quickly. Strong footsteps sounded. The opponent arrived with a cold, deadly look. Dark-haired brother Reg walked forward, his cape moving behind him. He was ready for the fight. Reg looked at his sister with a cold stare. He said this was not a simple duel. He planned to completely crush Daila. Then he climbed the steps and promised he would make the little girl regret her whole past. Little noble Daila took her place on the battlefield. The air between the two siblings felt very heavy. She wore her red hood. Her face looked focused and ready for the most important fight of her life. But she was shocked by what she just heard. She asked her master Derrick, do you really only care about money and nothing else? Derrick explained calmly. He said her mana had already become stable. Soon she would be able to cast strong spells. He told her she had noble blood in her veins. Those words left the young girl completely speechless. He added that the wild school style of magic focused much more on self-study than on getting constant lessons from a teacher. Diella shouted in annoyance. She asked why he was saying such strange things right now, at this exact moment. The young mercenary Derrick just listened quietly. His face stayed calm and peaceful while the little girl let out her frustration. Diella looked down. She admitted she knew she had not been the best student. But now she was being honest and serious. Tears came to her eyes. She cried and said she wanted to keep learning from the white-haired young man Derrick. She would not accept any other teacher in his place. Derrick stayed silent for a short moment. He watched the strong determination and deep sadness in his student's eyes. Then the young man started putting on his glove. He said he had never taken part in a formal noble duel before. But he told her he could teach her how to win a real fight. He asked, "Do you truly want victory today, little noble?" In the past, everyone said young Diella had no talent for magic. Even famous tutors gave up on her. People spoke cruelly. They said the Duplain family had already lost its greatness. They said the youngest child only knew how to throw tantrums. Some even said it would have been better if she had never been born. But now Diella showed a fierce, burning look in her eyes. She asked her master for help to win. At that moment, the little girl walked toward the battlefield. Her red cape moved gently in the bright morning sun. Derrick watched her closely. He realized she was not there as a sister or as the youngest daughter of a great family. She took her position with a strong spark in her eyes. Now she saw herself only as his disciple, and as a true mage. The battlefield became quiet. Diella stood at the front of the sparring ground. Her body was steady, but she felt tense inside. The butler stepped forward and spoke calmly. "We will use the sparring rules for high-rank mages. The first side to trigger General Pelham's protective magic circle will lose." With those words, the match began. Diella raised her eyes. She looked straight at Reg. For a short moment, everything else seemed to disappear. Reg's face looked calm, but a sharp, dangerous look hid in his eyes. It made Diella's instincts scream with warning. The signal came. Right away, a magic pendant near the platform lit up. A soft, shining light spread out like waves on water. Invisible lines formed in the air, creating General Pelham's protective magic circle. This strong spell was made to stop deadly damage and block fatal spells. From the side, Derrick watched with narrow eyes. So this is how nobles fight, he thought coldly. They use expensive tools just to avoid getting hurt. He glanced at the pendant, then back to the fight. It must be nice to be rich enough to waste money like that. The sparring time was set for 10 minutes. But when Derrick saw Reg's stance, he knew the fight would end much sooner. Reg did not plan to take it slow. Reg raised one hand. Thick purple mana gathered in his palm as he started chanting. The energy twisted hard and became a sharp, unstable ball that crackled with power. The air shook from its force. Diella looked up. Her brows pulled together as the heavy pressure hit her. The strong mana made her chest feel tight. Reg's eyes turned cold. Purple light exploded as the energy took shape. "Sorry," he thought without pity, "but I need you back in the annex." He rushed forward without warning. He shouted her name and swung his arm down. A sharp slash of energy cut through the air and flew straight at her. Diella's eyes flashed. At the last second, she used her ability and moved aside. The attack passed right by her, missing by a tiny bit, then crashed into the ground behind her. Reg clicked his tongue in anger. How dare she dodge? He did not wait. He attacked again, then again. Diella stepped back, keeping distance while watching his every move carefully. She stayed calm and did not panic. From the side, Derrick watched closely. She handles one-star magic without trouble, he thought. But in real combat, she is still new. She forces the spell instead of guiding it. At this rate, she will use up her mana too fast. A strong clash happened. Reg's magic hit Diella's barrier hard. The shield glowed bright and shook from the impact. The force made her arms vibrate. Reg laughed coldly. She is not even using star-rank magic, he said. It is just raw mana. Does she really think she can stop me with that? Purple light grew stronger. 3 balls of energy formed in his hand. Each one pulsed with wild power. His aura pressed down like a storm. If it is just a trick, Reg said coldly, I will break it with pure power. Try blocking this, Diella. Inside her barrier, Diella looked up. The huge mass of energy above her felt like it could swallow her. Her heart beat fast and loud. Suddenly, Derrick's voice came back to her mind. Remember this, Lady Diella, he had said. She could picture him standing tall, eyes sharp. Mercenaries do not fight like nobles. They do not care about fairness or honor. Their only goal is to win. His words had been hard but honest. This is not a clean duel, he continued. Even if you win, people may still criticize you. Daila's breathing slowed. The fear started to fade. A strong determination took its place. Another memory came. Are you really fine with that? Derrick had asked. Of course. Daila had shouted back without thinking. The memory ended. She returned to the fight. Her eyes became sharp as mana flowed through her body. Raig gave her no break. His attacks came fast and without mercy, among mercenaries. Daila thought, there are people who win even when they are weaker. She looked up a little. Those people do not duel, she whispered. They fight. Raig sent another sharp attack. It passed close to her side. The wind from it cut dangerously near. She dodged just in time. By fighting, she thought, they control the battlefield with the ground and timing. She forced herself to stay calm. Instead of running back more, Daila suddenly dropped low and went to the ground. They use every trick to win, she told herself. They never waste a moment when the enemy lowers their guard. Raig's magic hit her barrier again. This time, cracks spread fast across it. The shield shook hard and was about to break. Cold sweat ran down Daila's back. This is bad, she said quietly through tight teeth. Raig's voice cut through. The game is over. He lunged forward. Daila froze as the attack came close. Then, boom. A huge explosion shook the ground. Stones broke apart. Thick dust rose and covered everything. Derrick stood still, staring at the smoke. The maid screamed, Daila. From the stands, Daila's mother jumped up in panic. Daila. She cried. She turned to the butler. Stop the spell now. She is hurt. Her husband's voice stopped her. Sit down. The Duke spoke firmly. His eyes never left the battlefield. It is not over. But you saw it. His wife said. She was hit. No, the Duke said sharply. General Pelham's magic circle did not activate. He breathed out slowly. His eyes narrowed. Then he looked at Derrick. The young man had not even blinked. It was as if he knew this would happen. On the battlefield, Raig stared into the dust. She should have been hit, he muttered. Why did the circle not activate? Where is she? His eyes grew wide. Suddenly, sharp crystals of energy shot up from the ground next to him. Raig jumped away just in time, cursing. His heart raced. He realized, the attack came from below the platform. If she left the platform, that should count as a loss, he thought. Then he paused. He looked at the butler. Does being under the platform not count as leaving it? Raig gritted his teeth. They never expected a trick like this in a noble spar. Another attack came from below. He dodged by a tiny amount. His breathing grew heavy. I cannot even see her, he thought darkly. Landing a hit like this will be hard. All she needs is one good strike. This does not feel like a noble duel at all. Finally, Raig saw her. Daila rose from the ground. Dirt stuck to her clothes. She stood straight and looked up at him. A burning fire shone in her crimson eyes, very different from her usual calm face. Raig froze. I have seen that look before, he realized. The same look Derrick had when my older brother grabbed him by the collar. Raig's eyes snapped to Derrick. There is no way she thought of this alone. His teeth ground together. That bastard. Derrick, this was your plan. With a quick move, Raig took off his black coat and threw it aside. His stance changed completely. All playfulness was gone. Fine, he said in a cold voice. I will play along with your scheme, Derrick.
After getting attacked on the lower part of the battle area, Raig becomes even more determined and serious. Meanwhile, Daila's mother is watching everything. She notices something and asks in surprise. Daila, did you go under the platform? Down there in the dust bowl? Then she shouts. What are you doing, honey? Stop the fight right now. The head of the family, her husband, replies calmly to his wife. No rules have been broken. Let's watch a little longer. He keeps watching the fight with more curiosity. Daila is still hiding under the dust bowl. She uses her ice magic to confuse Raig. Her eyes are full of determination and focus. While concentrating, she can feel the flow of mana clearly. Up above, Raig grits his teeth in anger. He tries to cast a spell. Suddenly, ice appears under his feet again. He barely dodges it. Nervous and angry, he thinks to himself. She keeps targeting my feet whenever I start an incantation. I can't lose like this. Then his eyes catch something, the tall pole with a flag on top. An idea comes to his mind. Under the platform, Daila sits quietly and thinks. The mana flow stopped. He's planning something. No matter what he does, the next time he starts an incantation, I'll get him. She keeps focusing hard. The butler looks up nervously and says, Young master. Ray climbs up the tall pole. From that height and distance, Diella can't sense his mana properly. He thinks, she shouldn't be able to detect my mana from here. But casting a spell properly is impossible at this distance. There's only one way. He gathers mana in his hand, releases his blue aura, and thinks, I'll destroy the whole platform without any incantation. The mana he releases turns into an arrow. It shoots down and strikes the bottom of the pole hard. On the other side, Derrick watches everything calmly. He still doesn't look nervous. Raig's mana strike hits the base of the pole. It cracks loudly. The pole loses balance and starts falling. Raig jumps away just before it hits the ground. The pole crashes down, smashing the entire platform. Dust flies everywhere. Diella's mother opens her mouth in fear and screams. Raig! Raig lands on the ground, covering his mouth because of the thick dust flying everywhere. He coughs hard, but then his eyes catch something. He focuses. It's Diella. The dust has covered her completely. She can't see anything and stands there coughing. Raig takes advantage of the moment. He raises his hand again to cast a spell and creates a mana arrow. With a quick motion, he releases it straight toward Diella. The blue arrow flies fast, full of power. Suddenly, Diella notices it. She turns her head, sees the arrow coming, and quickly raises her hand to try to block or dodge. But her spell doesn't work well. She feels her mana slip away. A thin line of blood appears on her forehead from the strain. She grits her teeth in anger as the arrow keeps coming. She barely dodges it at the last second. Still nervous, she grits her teeth again. Raig prepares to create another attack. Diella starts running as far as she can to get away. Raig thinks to himself, I have the advantage at close range. Just one more magic arrow and, before he can finish the thought, Diella suddenly appears from the side. She kicks him hard in the chest with her foot. Diella, still full of anger, glitches his teeth. Raig's eyes go wide in shock. His mouth opens as the sudden attack hits him. He falls to his knees, one hand on his chest, feeling sharp pain. But Diella doesn't stop. She grabs a handful of dust from the ground and throws it straight into Raig's eyes. Raig screams in pain. While he tries to wipe the dust out of his eyes, still gritting his teeth in anger, he mutters, You little. Diella jumps back onto the broken ground above. After finally clearing his eyes, Raig looks surprised. He thinks, kicking, throwing sand. She's doing everything she can. She has almost no mana left. She's fighting this hard, just to win, even though she knows it's almost impossible. Then Raig stands up slowly. He thinks, Alright, Diella. This duel was to prove your own worth. I will give it my all in return, as your brother. It is already afternoon. The sun shines bright and strong. Diella stands on the ground, watching Raig. Raig slowly climbs back onto the broken platform. Diella puts her hand on her head to stop the blood. Her eyes are wide open, full of focus. She slowly removes her hand. The blood does not stop. It drips down her face, flows to her chin, and drops onto the ground. Suddenly, she remembers something. A memory comes back to her mind. She thinks of Derrick's words. Think of it like brushstrokes on a painting. Mana is your paint, and spellcasting is your brush. Collect the free-floating paint with your brush to create an entire image. In the memory, Derrick shows his mana flow in his hand. He says, That is magic. Diella surprised and her eyes wide open and she blushed. His mana flows gently into the sky, making the night clearer so everyone can see it. The scene changes back to the present. Diella closes her eyes. She remembers Derrick's words and focuses hard. Suddenly, her mana starts flowing around her. It covers her body like a shield. The more she thinks about Derrick's words, mana is paint, spells are the brush, the stronger the mana becomes. She gathers all her mana into her hand. She thinks, I feel it, the mana at my fingertips. Use the paint to draw. That is magic. A large spell circle appears on the ground under her feet. She pulls out a sharp ice spear made of mana right beside her. The butler looks shocked. His mouth opens wide. He says, This is... Diella's mother is surprised too. She turns to her husband and says, Honey, Diella is using one-star magic. Raig looks nervous. He thinks, Ice spears. You've done it now, Diella. Diella controls the ice spear with her hand. She moves it into attack position. Raig gathers mana in his hand too. He creates many mana arrows. He thinks, but that doesn't change anything. I'm still one step ahead, even in one-star magic, Diella. I'll hit her before she hits me. Then I'll win. Diella prepares to release her ice spear toward Raig. At the same time, Raig releases his many mana arrows toward Diella. The ice spear flies with full power toward Reg. The arrows fly toward Diela. Both attacks crash into each other in the middle. A huge explosion happens on the ground. Blue mana bursts out everywhere. The shockwave hits Diela's mother and father. They look stunned. Dust covers the whole area. The mana energy changes shape into a big circle. Yellow lightning spreads around it. A loud echo of energy fills the air. Reg breathes heavily after using so much magic. On the other side, Diela stays silent but breathes hard too. Nearby, Derrick watches everything quietly. His red eyes stay focused, taking in every detail.
1 year ago, a mother bird was feeding her 3 baby birds in their nest on a tree branch. The tree stood outside the Grand Duplain house. Inside the house, voices echoed through the halls. Grand Duplain was walking beside his butler, and 2 other men were following behind them. The butler spoke respectfully, "Sir, a letter arrived this morning from the Duplain resistance. It seems to be about the upcoming social gathering." When Grand Duplain heard this, he turned his eyes toward Diela, who was sitting sadly on a chair. She was alone, hugging herself, lost in deep thought. He looked at her and thought for a moment, wondering how the matter should be handled. However, he did not say anything to her. After a short pause, he quietly walked away, back to the present. Diela is still standing on her feet, shocked. Blood is slowly spreading across her forehead. She cannot believe what has just happened. Suddenly, a loud sound echoed, and a barrier formed around her. She stood frozen in the same place, shocked. After the barrier appeared, she clenched her teeth tightly. On the other side, Reg was sitting on the ground. The ice spears had missed their target and fell beside him. Dust moved around his feet. Derrick looked at the whole situation carefully. Then he suddenly realized something and lowered his head sadly. At that moment, Diela thought, "I lost." She began to cry loudly, with tears falling from her eyes. Grand Duplain was watching from above and understood everything that had happened. But Diela's mother, filled with anger, said to Grand Duplain, "Honey, what on earth is this? Is this filthy and vulgar thing what you call a magic spar? You cannot be serious." Meanwhile, Diela was still crying loudly and could not stop. Her mother continued angrily, "Are you telling me that this so-called teacher has been teaching something like this to a young lady of the Duplain family?" After seeing Diela like this, Grand Duplain remembered his past. In his youth, during the war, he had stood proudly and said, "My name is Raymond Oswald Duplain. It is an honor to serve you and take part in this war, Your Grace." The senior officer in front of him replied, "Yes, I have heard a lot about you from your father. You have your father's eyes, full of ambition." Raymond answered respectfully, "Thank you." Back in the present, Diela was still crying. Tears fell from her eyes as she wiped them away. Raymond Oswald Duplain watched his daughter with deep emotion. He thought to himself, "The look in your eyes has grown stronger, Diela." At that moment, several maids rushed in. Worried. One of them cried out, "Lady Diela. Are you all right?" Diela remained standing in the same place, still crying. 4 maids gathered around her with concern. One maid said softly, "My goodness. You must receive treatment at once." She tried to hold Diela's hand, but Diela pulled her hand away. The maid looked confused, then Diela slowly walked toward Reg. Reg looked up at her nervously and said, Well." He awkwardly rubbed his hands together and added, "Good work, Diela." But Diela said nothing. She lowered her head, ignored him, and kept walking. 2 maids followed her. One said gently, "My lady, please allow me to escort you to your chambers." Diela did not answer and continued walking. The maid asked again, "My lady." But still, there was no response. Diela then stopped in front of Derrick and lowered her head sadly. Derrick looked at her with sympathy. Her lips trembled, and she began to cry again. Tears fell from her eyes. She grabbed her skirt tightly and, through her tears, said, "I lost. I'm sorry." Derrick was surprised to hear those words. His eyes widened slightly. Then he slowly stood up and said gently, "It's all right. It's okay to lose." He continued softly, "Use this frustration to rise higher and become stronger." Hearing this, Diela could no longer hold back her tears. She cried loudly in front of Derrick. As she cried, the maids called out in worry, "My lady." Diela's mother stepped forward quickly. She lifted her skirt and rushed toward Diela in worry. The maids were still trying to support Diela. Her mother knelt in front of her and gently held Diela's cheeks. With tears in her eyes, she said softly, "Oh, my Diela. I can't believe you went through something like that. You've had such a hard time, my baby." Daila looked at her and said emotionally, "Mother." Her mother hugged her tightly. "It's okay. It's okay now." Tears fell from her eyes as she spoke. Then she said gently, "Go quickly and get treated first." Daila nodded weakly. "Yes." With the help of the maids, she walked away. Her mother stayed behind, wiping her tears and thinking about her daughter. Then her eyes slowly turned toward Derrick. She began walking toward him. Derrick noticed her coming. Suddenly, she shouted angrily, "Derrick, you shameless man. Do you even understand what you've done? So what if you taught her one-star magic? Do you think that makes you impressive?" Without warning, she slapped Derrick across the face. Derrick remained silent, still furious. She clenched her teeth and grabbed his shirt. "You taught her nothing but cheap tricks. You stained a noble lily with filth. You made the Grand Duke's daughter do something dirty and shameful." Derrick lowered his head and listened quietly. She slapped him again and shouted, "There is a world you lowly trash don't even understand. Something precious must be protected with dignity." Then she turned to her husband and said, "Honey. You saw it too, didn't you? This wasn't even a proper magic spar. He was teaching Daila something disgraceful." She was still holding Derrick's shirt. At that moment, Raymond Oswald Duplain walked toward them. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed. Daila's mother froze in shock. Her eyes widened. Raymond had slapped her. She held her cheek and stared at him in disbelief. Raymond said calmly, "Do you not realize who is behaving most disgracefully right now?" She looked at him, shocked. "Why? He is just a commoner." "Yes," Raymond interrupted firmly. "A mere commoner. But he is our daughter's teacher. What kind of parent treats their child's teacher like this?" Derrick still stood quietly with his head lowered. Raymond then said respectfully to Derrick, "Please forgive her. Every parent has their own way of loving their child." Derrick slowly raised his head and thought for a moment. Then he replied calmly, "It's all right." Raymond turned and said, "We have something to discuss privately. Come to the audience room." They walked away together, leaving Daila's mother standing there in shock. She watched Derrick angrily, clenching her teeth while holding her cheek. In the audience room, Raymond dipped his pen into ink and began writing. "You have raised Daila well," he said while writing. "As the master of this estate, I should give you a proper reward. The highest realm allowed to a commoner." He looked up and asked, "Do you want 3-star magic?" Derrick was surprised. He thought to himself, "He understands me perfectly. Even better than I understand myself. He knows exactly what I want and offers it directly. This is a 5-star mage, a Grand Duke of the nation. When an opportunity comes, it must be taken." Derrick looked at him firmly and said, "Yes. I want it." In the audience room, Raymond Oswald Duplain spoke calmly to Derrick, "You have taught Daila 1-star magic well. But in Ebelstein's high society, that level is not enough to survive." Derrick replied respectfully, "There are many people in the Duplain family who can guide Lady Daila. Now that she understands the basics, she will grow quickly." Raymond looked at him and said, "What my daughter needs is not just an instructor. She needs a true teacher." He dipped his pen into the ink again, then folded his hands. "And you? As a commoner, you hold an ambition so great that you are not even allowed to dream of it." Derrick thought, "The Grand Duke has not spoken to me much, yet he understands me so well." Raymond continued, "Do you know how insulting that ambition might seem to the proud nobles? I am willing to overlook it only because it is you." Derrick lowered his head. He knows I am not aiming for 3-star magic. I am looking beyond it, toward 4-star and even higher, Derrick thought. That is what makes this man so frightening. While writing, Raymond said, "If you have truly accepted that ambition, you cannot remain in a place like this for long. You are already preparing to leave, aren't you?" "Yes," Derrick replied. "I am." Raymond nodded slightly. "I am not unaware of your ambition. Still, you must teach Daila a little longer." He paused before saying, "The highest level allowed to a commoner. Do you want 3-star magic?" Derrick was surprised, but he quickly answered, "Yes. I want it." Later, Derrick entered the library. He looked around and found a book. He picked it up, opened it, and began turning the pages. After reading for a moment, he thought, "Impressive." He looked at the other books in front of him. Many people spend their entire lives trying to obtain even one 2-star spellbook. And here, all of these are 3-star spellbooks. With this much knowledge, there is more than enough reason to stay in this estate longer. If Pelline finds out, she will be furious. A few days later, in the afternoon, a pigeon flew across the sky. Daila stood proudly and cleared her throat. I am a 1-star mage now. Derrick, who was reading a 3-star magic book, replied calmly, well, even if it was only once, you did use 1-star magic. So yes, I suppose you can call yourself a 1-star mage. Daila stood proudly in front of Derrick, shining with happiness. Suddenly, she stepped closer to him and said, what? That's it? Your student made progress, and you're not even happy? Derrick kept reading his book and replied calmly, it's not an achievement I earned, is it? Daila turned around and placed a hand on her head. Seriously. This wasn't easy, you know. Derrick glanced at her and said, it seems you've recovered a lot in the last 3 days. You were crying your eyes out back then. Hearing that, Daila froze in embarrassment. She quickly sat down on a chair and said nervously, hey. Who was crying? I wasn't crying. It was just dust in my eyes. She pouted and added, and father should have told me earlier. I thought you were going to be kicked out. Derrick closed his book and looked at her. All right then. Shall we begin today's lesson? You're improving quickly. Soon, you'll learn other 1-star spells too. Daila's eyes lit up. What did you say? Quickly. Derrick replied calmly, your growth is unusual. It's rare to use 1-star magic so soon after learning magic manifestation. Daila smiled proudly. See? I told you. I'm the type of person who does what she says. So, what are we learning next? Magic arrow? It looked easy to cast without a chant. Or wind blade like Raig used. That looked strong. Oh. Or ice spear. That felt amazing. If I practice more, I'll be able to hit even Raig. You'll be practicing magic manifestation. Derrick said calmly. Daila turned around in shock. Huh? Why? Aren't we learning 1-star spells? There are many reasons, Derrick replied. But in the end, the basics matter most. Simply put, it all comes down to mana. Daila's excitement disappeared. She sighed. Okay. Fine. If you say so, then it is what it is. I got all excited for nothing, thinking we'd learn new spells. Derrick watched her quietly, resting his hand on his chin. Daila noticed and asked, why are you looking at me like that? Is there something on my face? No, my lady, Derrick said. I'm just surprised to see you listening so obediently. She turned her face away. What do you take me for? I've respected your words from the beginning. From the beginning? Derrick replied. You poured dirty water over my head. Twice. Daila lowered her head in embarrassment. You still remember that? It's hard to forget, Derrick said calmly. Suddenly, Daila laughed awkwardly. What nice weather today. Magic manifestation sounds fun. Let's hurry and practice. Derrick smiled slightly at her reaction. Time passed, and it was already midnight. Outside the Duke's house, Daila lay on the ground, breathing heavily. A faint blue ice aura flowed around her. Derrick stood beside her and said, I heard you're going to get busier. Daila slowly sat up, still tired. Derrick sat down next to her. So you heard, she said quietly. She touched her head in worry. I don't know. Starting next week, I'll have etiquette and general education classes too. Derrick looked at Daila and said, isn't that a good thing? You've learned 1-star magic. Now you'll receive a true noble education. Daila replied sadly, do you think I'm happy? She looked up at the sky and continued, basic noble etiquette, foreign languages, geography, history, botany, piano, sewing. I don't understand why I have to learn all of this. How did Aisline endure it? Derrick answered, that's why she's called the flower of Duplain. That's why she stands at the center of Ebelstein's high society. Daila sighed. I just want to study magic. Then study it, Derrick said calmly. I'm not sure we'll really have time, Daila replied. His Grace hired me, Derrick said. We still have plenty of freedom. Is there anyone who can throw me out at this point? Daila smiled slightly. Of course there is. Father acknowledges you, but Mother isn't the type to accept it so easily. Derrick frowned a little. Why does the madam want to send me away? Daila looked up again. She's probably worried that if I learn from you, I'll drift away from noble dignity. And become like a mercenary. Even today's spar didn't look very noble. It's far from what high society prefers. Derrick lowered his eyes and stayed silent for a moment. Then he looked at her and said, then it's simple. Daila blinked. What do you mean? Lady Daila, Derrick said calmly, silencing the madam isn't difficult. You only need to remove her reason for opposing me. Daila looked at him in confusion. The next morning, sunlight filled the house. Daila's mother walked through the hall, still worried. How could such an indecent man become her teacher? Oh, my poor baby. Her imagination ran wild. She imagined Derrick saying, "Watch closely, this is the mercenary way," while doing something rough and improper. She imagined Daila following him proudly and shocking the nobles of Ebelstein. My head hurts. She muttered to herself. What could that lowly man possibly teach Daila? Even if my husband accepts him, I am the mistress of this estate. I will find a way to deal with this. Just then, she heard a voice. Mother. Her thoughts disappeared at once. Daila? She turned with a gentle smile and opened her arms. Thinking, even if others say you are childish, I love it when you run into my arms and smile, but that did not happen. Instead, Daila stood at a distance and bowed politely. Did you rest well last night, mother? Her mother froze in surprise. Daila continued cheerfully, I couldn't leave the annex while I was being treated, so I'm sorry we couldn't talk properly. There's so much I want to discuss with you, but unfortunately I have a piano lesson this morning. Oh. I see. Her mother replied nervously. Daila stepped a little closer. I must go now. My general education schedule is quite full. Her mother blinked. Daila? Your etiquette lessons haven't started yet, have they? They begin next week. Don't they? Yes, mother, Daila answered politely. Thanks to your consideration, I'm really looking forward to them. She looked calm and mature, almost like her older sister. Her mother was still stunned. Oh. Well, hurry along. You'll be late for class. Daila turned and walked away. Her mother reached out slightly, wanting to stop her, but Daila continued forward. Suddenly, a maid nearby lost her balance and dropped a wooden tray. Everyone flinched, expecting Daila to shout, but instead, Daila smiled gently. Oh my, are you hurt? Please be careful. Don't overwork yourself. The maid stared at her in shock. Why yes, Lady Daila. Her mother and the other maids looked at one another in disbelief as Daila calmly continued on her way to class. In the Ebelstein noble district, the Rosia salon was full of laughter these days. Lady Eislein, I was really worried about you at the last gathering. You looked so heavy with worry. Lady Eislein looked surprised. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand and said, Oh, did I? I didn't mean to make you worry. She laughed softly while drinking her tea and added happily, most of my worries are gone now, so I feel much better. The red-haired girl sitting in front of Eislein was Alante Alphione Belmiard, the second daughter of House Belmiard. That's a relief, Alante replied. When I heard you went outside the noble district to save someone, I was very worried. Eislein smiled and said. Thank you for worrying about me, Lady Alante. The truth is, my younger sister Daila needed a magic teacher. I went to find one myself, so I was quite busy. Inside her mind, Alante felt confused. What? Lady Eislein went to find the teacher herself? How amazing must this teacher be for a Duplain lady to go in person? Denise, the second daughter of House Veltus, Linnaeus Veltus, held her teacup and asked, Did you say Lady Daila? Your younger sister, Eislein answered calmly, Yes, that's right. I saw Daila at the mansion recently, and she has become such a proper young lady. I could hardly recognize her. While the three of them sat together drinking tea, the other girls around them whispered to each other. Eislein continued with a warm smile, she has even reached 1-star magic. Her manners are so neat and graceful that it made me feel I need to work harder too. Meanwhile, Lady Denise thought to herself, that's strange. Why is Eislein suddenly talking about her sister? Wasn't House Duplain hiding Daila? Then Denise said, It sounds like you found an excellent magic teacher. Eislein replied happily, Yes. He has no noble status, but he must be very skilled. It was worth going all the way to the Beldun mercenary corps to find him myself. Lady Denise was shocked when she heard that the man was a mercenary. Lady Alante was confused by this. As she held her cup of tea, Lady Alante thought, come to think of it, if it's Daila. Isn't she the reason the mansion's cook ran away from Duplain? She remembered how the cook used to say, Lady Alante is truly kind. Back then, those words had made Alante feel nervous. Now, in the present, as she sipped her tea, she thought again about Daila's teacher. Not only did he reform that infamous brute, but he even turned her into a 1-star mage. After thinking for a while, Lady Allant smiled softly and asked Lady Eislein, "May I ask the name of that magic teacher?" Eislein blinked. "Pardon?" With a calm but chilling smile, Lady Allant said, "If he is Lady Daila's teacher, he will surely become even more famous in the future, won't he? I would like to know his name in advance." Eislein smiled brightly. "Ah, his name is Derrick." The scene changed to the Duplain house. Daila was talking to her mother, Miriella Dibble Duplain. "Derrick also teaches me a little etiquette," Daila said happily. "Etiquette is really hard to learn on my own." Miriella listened quietly. With a cold smile, she said, "I see. How admirable of you to study by yourself." Daila shook her head. "It's not that I studied alone. Derrick taught me." Miriella's smile stiffened. "What was difficult when you were studying by yourself?" Daila answered excitedly. "Most of it was difficult. I can do even this much thanks to Derrick." Miriella forced a small smile, trying to hide her anger. "Ah. I see." But inside, she was furious. Derrick. 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 How many times is that name going to come up? Seriously. I don't know what he did to Daila. But I can't just let this continue. There must be a way to stop this. Meanwhile, the servants of the Duplain house were talking happily. "Lady Daila has been so kind to the servants lately," one maid said. "She has become so gentle." The gardener, smiling widely, added, "Lady Daila has been in such a good mood lately. She's changed so much in just a few weeks." The head butler thought for a moment and said, It's surprising. I only ever saw that kind of behavior from Lady Eislein before. Maybe she is finally trying to become a true lady. You can feel noble dignity from Lady Daila now." Hearing all the praise for Derrick and Daila, Miriella Dibble Duplain clenched her teeth in anger, unable to hide her fury any longer. At night, the stars were shining in the sky. A 3-star spellbook lay on the ground. Derrick was trying to use a 3-star spell. Blue mana gathered in his hand, but sweat covered his face. He gritted his teeth as he tried to pull in more mana. It was too difficult. The mana suddenly disappeared, and Derrick fell back onto the grass, breathing heavily. Sweat dripped down his face. Just then, he felt someone behind him. He turned around. Raig was walking toward him, waving his hand with a small, cold smile. "Oh, sorry. Was I interrupting your training?" Raig asked. Derrick was tired, but he replied calmly, "Not at all." "What brings you here?" A few minutes later, Raig sat beside him. "I wanted to talk about Daila," he said. "All right," Derrick answered. Raig's eyes suddenly noticed the book in Derrick's hand. He looked surprised. "Wait. Isn't that a 3-star spellbook?" "Yes, it is," Derrick replied. "His Grace lent it to me." Raig was shocked. "He lent that to you?" Derrick nodded. "It's too difficult for me right now. But there's no harm in studying ahead." Raig remembered when his father once said, "He's a true mage." "That's impressive," Raig said quietly. Then Derrick asked, "So, what about Lady Daila? Is that why you came?" Raig looked down, a little nervous. "Oh. Right. That. It's a bit complicated. What do teenage girls like these days?" Derrick blinked. Confused, Raig shyly continued, "If I embroidered a doll that looked like her, would she like it?" Derrick immediately answered with a serious face, "Absolutely not." Raig laughed awkwardly. "Ah. Right. I thought so. I'm not saying I was going to make one or anything. I didn't think it was a good idea either." He stood up and rubbed the back of his head. "Should we head inside? If you're done training." Derrick picked up the 3-star spellbook and followed him. As they walked, Raig said, "Anyway. I'm grateful to you." Derrick looked confused but stayed silent. "The mood in the mansion has been good lately," Raig continued with a small smile. "Even Valerian has been focusing on managing the territory. Father doesn't show it, but he looks satisfied." "Is that so?" Derrick said. "It's hard to read His Grace's feelings." Raig smiled. "Everyone in this mansion would agree with that." Suddenly, Raig stopped walking. He looked up at the night sky. "I guess I should accept what I need to accept," he said quietly. "People can change. Especially kids at that age. I don't know if I just didn't notice it before. Or if I was avoiding it. But since Daila has changed, I think I should change too." He turned to Derrick. "This is thanks to you." "Thank you, Derrick." Derrick didn't know what to say. They started walking again. Reg waved his finger slightly and added, by the way, Daila's magic felt different. Did you notice? Derrick asked from behind him. Yeah, Reg said. It was like she was drawing a picture. Derrick thought, a genius really is a genius. He truly is a duplane. It shouldn't have been easy to notice that difference. Yes, Derrick explained calmly. Lady Daila uses the mana control style of the School of the Wild. Each person uses mana in a different way. Once she reaches a certain level, she'll be able to study on her own without my help. At that stage, a teacher's interference can actually become a hindrance. Reg nodded slowly. I see. That level. Her time to shine will come eventually. 2 months later, Lady Daila was sitting on a chair. She gently placed some flowers on the table and looked at them in confusion. Huh? What is this? Why flowers? She asked. The maid standing behind her brushed her hair calmly and said, they bloomed so beautifully, so I brought them to put in your hair. Daila picked up one flower, smelled it, and blushed. They smell so nice. It feels like spring has already been here for months. I'm comfortable using 1-star magic now, and I've become much closer to the servants too. She looked up with a sweet smile. I think I missed so much before. It's all thanks to Derrick. The maid smiled as she continued brushing her hair. I was wondering why you looked so happy today. Is it magic lesson day? Daila blinked. I look happy. Yes, the maid said cheerfully. Then I should place the flowers nicely. She carefully put the flowers in Daila's hair. Ah. Give me one of the leftover flowers, Daila said suddenly. I want to give one to Derrick. A few minutes later, the flowers slipped from her hands and fell to the floor. Daila stood frozen, tears forming in her eyes. The fallen flowers lay at her feet. What do you mean by that, Derrick? She asked sadly. Derrick and Valerian were standing in the room. Derrick looked at her calmly. You heard me, he said softly. Then his voice turned sad. There is nothing left for me to teach you. He paused before continuing. That is how the seasons work. Just as there is no eternal winter, there is no eternal spring. The scene changed to the audience room. Derrick was sitting on a sofa. He spoke calmly, Your Grace has likely noticed as well, but Lady Daila belongs to the School of the Wild. Among them, her talent is especially strong. He lowered his eyes and said sadly, if I stay involved with her any longer, I might only end up breaking her wings. Raymond Oswald Duplain replied, I understand. Then there is no reason for you to remain in this mansion. Yes, that is correct, Derrick answered. Raymond was silent for a few minutes. Then he stood up and walked to the window. Looking outside, he spoke in a quiet voice. Thanks to you, many things have changed. Because of you, my daughter was able to grow. I was too busy managing the territory and failed to be a good father. But now, I feel relieved. He turned slightly. When will you leave? Derrick replied, I heard that Lady Eislein will visit the mansion soon and then return to Ebelstein. I plan to ride in her carriage at that time. I see. Raymond said. You will return the library key now. Derrick nodded. Yes. I will return the spellbooks I am reading and pass the key through the head butler. There is no need for that, Raymond said coldly. Return the key now. Derrick said nothing. He looked at his 3-star spellbooks for a moment. If there is nothing else, you may go, Raymond added. Derrick stayed silent. He stood up, bowed his head respectfully, and left the audience room. As he walked down the hall, Daila suddenly stepped in front of him. You appeared out of nowhere, she said, her voice shaking. And now you're leaving out of nowhere. Derrick looked at her and bowed slightly. Lady Daila. It cannot be helped. I know you won't listen, she said softly. But I'll say it anyway. She paused, then asked nervously, can't you stay? Derrick didn't answer at first. He stepped closer to her and bent down slightly so they were at eye level. He gave her a gentle smile. As I always planned, I will return to being a mercenary. I will continue studying magic as well. And when you build more skill, you will go to Ebelstein for your debut. We can meet again then. Daila lowered her head sadly. If my level rises more by that time, Derrick continued, I will be able to teach you something new. You're annoying, Daila said quietly. You always say the right things, so I have nothing to argue with. That night, clouds covered the moon. Inside her room, Daila was sleeping, sweat on her forehead. In her dream, she heard many harsh voices. Daila. You are a useless child. An incompetent child. What do you have besides your bloodline? You don't have any talent. You are the shame of Duplain. In her dream, she was a small child again, holding a toy, tears running down her face. Suddenly, her eyes flew open. No! She shouted, waking up. She realized it was only a nightmare. She breathed heavily and placed her hand on her head. The maid rushed into the room. Lady Daila? Are you all right? I heard you shout. What happened? Daila looked at the maid and thought, what if I pretend? Maybe if I go back to being difficult. If I cause trouble like before. Then Derrick would stay for me, wouldn't he? Lady Daila? Are you feeling unwell? The maid asked again nervously. Daila slowly moved her lips. No. The maid looked surprised. I won't do something like that anymore, Daila thought. She looked at the maid and smiled gently. I'm fine. Don't worry. That wouldn't make me valuable anyway, she told herself. The next morning, sunlight filled the mansion. Lady Isline was sitting inside her carriage. She looked at Derrick and said, if I drop you off at the commercial district, that should be fine, right? Derrick held her bag and nodded. Yes, I would appreciate that. Isline smiled. Go and say your goodbyes. We will depart soon. Derrick turned his eyes toward them. The Duplain family stood in front of him. Raig and Valerian looked at him with warm smiles, while Daila turned her face away. Valerian spoke first. So. You're really leaving? Derrick nodded. I have to return to where I came from. Raig said gently, life in the mansion couldn't have been easy. You worked hard all this time. Valerian added, if anything happens, contact me. I'll help as much as I can. Derrick bowed his head. Thank you. Then he lifted his eyes and looked at Daila. She also looked at him, but neither of them spoke. Derrick kept watching her quietly. Finally, Daila said, what? Why are you looking at me like that? Did you think I would beg you not to go? Don't get the wrong idea. I'm not a child anymore. Derrick smiled softly. It was an honor to teach you. I can't proudly call myself your teacher, but I hope you'll remember the magic you learned from me. Daila crossed her arms but smiled. Sorry, but I'm going to proudly say you're my teacher. You won't be able to live quietly anymore, you know? You're the teacher of the great Daila Catherine Duplain, after all. Derrick felt happy but stayed silent. Daila then turned her face away and said quietly, take care of yourself. Don't do anything reckless and get hurt. I'll be fine, Derrick replied. Please don't push yourself too hard either. I'm already an adult. I can take care of myself now, Daila said. Her words reminded Derrick of his own past. Long ago, he had said the same thing to his teacher, I'm already an adult. I can take care of myself. Back then, his teacher had hugged him and said, Derrick, take my words to heart. Back in the present, Derrick stayed silent for a moment. Then he looked at Daila and said gently, Lady Daila. He placed his hand on her head, you don't need to grow up so quickly. Daila's eyes widened. Suddenly, tears filled them. Derrick turned and walked toward the carriage. Daila wiped her tears and called out, Derrick. He looked back, with tears still in her eyes but a bright smile on her face. She waved and shouted, see you again. Derrick bowed respectfully. Let's meet again in Ebelstein, Lady Daila. More tears fell from her eyes. Okay. Then the carriage left the mansion. Scene changes, Ebelstein Commercial District. In the busy streets of Ebelstein, a door slowly opened inside the guild building. A girl was beating a boy, punching him in the face while others cheered. That's right. Hit him harder. Someone shouted. At that moment, Derrick appeared behind them. The girl kept hitting the boy, blood on his mouth. Then she noticed Derrick, her face lit up with joy. Derrick. Derrick smiled at her. I'm back home. At the tavern Belden's Tier, Derrick sat at a wooden table. The tavern master placed a cup in front of him. This is honey wine, the master said with a smile. Nobles like to act classy about it, but you used to love it. It's a welcome drink, so it's free. Thank you, Derrick replied calmly. Pelline looked at Derrick closely and narrowed his eyes. Were you always this pale? Or did you become even paler after living with nobles? Derrick looked confused but stayed silent. With a smirk, Pelline continued, when I heard you became a magic teacher, I thought maybe the nobles were all taking some strange drug together. So what happened? Tell me. Derrick held the wine in his hand and answered quietly. I simply worked there. There isn't much to say. Pelin laughed. Wow, listen to you, talking like a noble. Would it hurt to tell us something? The tavern master smiled and handed Pelin a drink. That's enough. Just drink. Pelin slammed the table. I'm annoyed. I went through hell working alone while he was gone. The master chuckled. But Derrick must have earned a lot of money, right? So, did they pay well? Derrick shook his head. I received something more important than money. The master looked confused. Derrick then showed them a spellbook. The master's eyes widened. What is that? Could it be a 2-star spellbook? Pelin jumped to his feet in shock. Something that rare. Derrick calmly corrected him. No. It's a 3-star spellbook. The master shouted in panic, did you steal it? If you get caught, you're dead. Pelin's eyes sparkled. Who cares about stealing? It's a 3-star spellbook. I want one too. Where did you get it? Derrick answered quietly, the Grand Duke gave it to me. Pelin grabbed Derrick by the collar. What? Don't lie, you little punk. Are they looking for an archery instructor there too? Tell me. Derrick just sighed and looked away. Hours later, Pelin was asleep in his chair while the tavern master cleaned the floor. Derrick sat quietly, reading the 3-star spellbook. After a while, Derrick asked, have any requests come in lately? The master looked surprised. You just came back. You're taking a job already? Yes, Derrick replied. Something light. Maybe a simple subjugation. I feel like I've lost my edge a little. The master laughed softly. Like you would ever lose your edge. There's always a shortage of mages. If you want work, there's plenty. Then I'll start tomorrow, Derrick said. As soon as possible. The next morning, Derrick and Pelin rode in a carriage. Derrick read his 3-star spellbook while Pelin ate bread. Their first job was to subdue a huge goblin. The monster chased Pelin, who ran in fear, sweating and shouting. Derrick stepped forward calmly, drawing his sword. With Pelin's arrows and Derrick's blade, they defeated the goblin. Pelin was breathing heavily afterward, but Derrick stood still and calm. Their next job was a giant spider. Pelin shouted nervously while fighting. Derrick calmly infused his sword with magic and prepared his attack. Together, they finally defeated the creature. On the way back, Derrick continued reading his 3-star spellbook. Pelin, however, felt sick and started vomiting from exhaustion. That night, they set up a campfire. Pelin fell asleep quickly. But Derrick was not there. Far from the camp, Derrick stood alone in the dark forest. Blue magical energy flowed around him as he tried to cast a 3-star spell. Sweat ran down his face as he gathered all his strength into his hand. A small amount of magic appeared, but suddenly it exploded. A bright blue light flashed through the forest and threw Derrick backward. He landed hard on the ground. His hand was bleeding. Breathing heavily, he looked at his injured hand. I've mostly mastered 2-star spells, he thought. But the wall to 3-star is much higher than I expected. The next day, the two of them returned to the guild. Days passed quickly. Summer came to Belden's Tier, and the tavern was warm and lively. After some time, autumn arrived. The air grew cooler. Then winter began. Snow fell heavily outside. One night, the tavern door slowly opened. Pelin and Derrick stepped inside. Pelin was shivering, it's freezing. Pelin complained. How much colder is it going to get? Both of them were covered in blood from battle. Pelin also had a bad cold and kept sniffling. Derrick was quiet as always, though his clothes were stained with blood too. The guild master looked at them and laughed. It's good to be young. You went all the way to the Kent Mountains and came back in this weather? Pelin covered his nose and replied. I kept telling him we should go when it's warmer. Derrick placed a large bag on the table. The guild master picked it up and raised an eyebrow. You two are the only crazy ones who would bring back a harpy's head in this snow. He then handed them 2 thick, warm pieces of cloth. Derrick took one and pressed it gently against his wound. Thank you. Pelin wrapped his around his face. Ah. I feel alive again. The guild master sat down and checked the bag. Since you worked so hard, you'll probably rest tomorrow. He paused and smiled. Actually, a request just came in. It fits you perfectly, Derrick. Derrick looked at him calmly. What kind of request? It's expensive and easy. The guild master replied. Though it might be a little annoying. The request came from the Rohel Mercenary Corps on West Street. You've heard of Count Belmiard, right? Derrick nodded slightly. They're looking for a commoner to help with magic sparring. To be honest. They need a punching dummy. You just go, take a few hits, and get paid. Derrick quietly accepted the job. Later, Derrick arrived at the Nobles District, inside a magic sparring arena. At the same time, a young noblewoman named Elant was walking in with her teacher. So who am I sparring with today? Elant asked. Her teacher answered calmly, to improve your offensive magic, we arranged a commoner for you. Elant stopped walking. What? You want me to beat up a commoner? Her teacher smiled. This is part of your training. We promised him good compensation. You may practice as much as you want. Elant sighed. So this practice is just beating up a commoner. Typical nobles. Her teacher added, still, he can handle 1-star magic. Elant replied confidently, Teacher, I'll be 2-star soon. There's a huge difference between 1-star and 2-star. It's like heaven and earth. Meanwhile, Derrick was sitting quietly on a bench, putting on his shoes. He heard footsteps echoing in the arena and looked up. Elant stood in front of him. Are you my sparring opponent today? She asked. Derrick stood and bowed politely. My name is Derrick. I'm Elant, she replied. She paused and thought, Derrick. I've heard that name somewhere before. Her teacher clapped his hands lightly. All right, let's begin. To the arena. As they walked, Elant wondered, is he really a mage? He looks so young. Both of them stepped into the arena. Elant stretched her arms and said calmly, you know the basic etiquette of magic sparring, right? Yes, Derrick replied. I know the basics. Good, she said. Resist as much as you can. I'll end this quickly. She thought to herself, if I blast him out of bounds with one shockwave, this will be over fast. Derrick looked at her calmly. Resist as much as I can. How much resistance do you need from me? Elant blinked in confusion. What kind of strange question is that? Derrick answered politely, I need to know how much I should resist in order to be helpful to you. Her teacher nodded slightly. Elant let out a small laugh. You talk in a funny way. Like I said, resist with everything you have. Derrick thought for a moment. Very well, he said quietly. As you wish. Blue magic slowly began to gather around his palm. Both of them were ready to fight. Magic gathered in their hands as they prepared their spells. Lady Elant quietly began chanting another spell. Magic energy gathered in her hand as she thought, that commoner brat deserves some praise for mastering a 1-star rank at such a young age. But he is far too arrogant. I will make him understand the wall between nobles and commoners. She chanted more words and then released a powerful attack from her hand toward Derrick. Derrick noticed the attack coming. He focused calmly and stepped slightly back, easily dodging it. The spell passed by him and struck the trees behind him. The impact exploded, cutting the trees into 2 pieces. Elant narrowed her eyes in disbelief. How did he dodge it so easily? Derrick looked at her confidently and asked, what's the next attack? Hearing that made Lady Elant furious. This little brat. I guess he does have a reason to be confident. But that doesn't mean the wall between us disappears, she began chanting again. Many magic circles appeared on the ground around her. From those circles, countless ice arrows formed and gathered in the air as she controlled them. This will end it. She thought. With a wave of her hand, she fired all the ice arrows toward Derrick. Derrick stood calmly. He raised his hand and cast a simple spell. Elant's eyes widened in shock. She couldn't understand what she was seeing. Derrick's simple spell destroyed every ice arrow flying toward him. The broken pieces of magic scattered and fell near Elant. She stood there, frozen in surprise. And no, it was only a simple spell. But he can control it to this level. Even her teacher watching nearby was surprised. Oh. For a commoner, his level of magic is excellent. It seems the claim that he was a veteran mercenary was not just empty talk. Lady Elant began chanting another spell. Golden energy started flowing around her like fire. She thought, I admit that I underestimated him. This time, I will attack him seriously. With her spell, many golden arrows appeared around her, shining with a strong golden aura. On the other side, Derrick calmly watched and thought, she changed her strategy. She isn't trying to hit me directly. She plans to blow away the entire sparring arena. For a noble, her adaptability is impressive. Lady Allant raised her hand and gathered many golden arrows around her. She controlled them with her magic and then released them all at once toward Derrick. The golden arrows rained down on him. Derrick stayed in his place and thought, I can't dodge this. He quickly chanted a spell and created a magic barrier around himself. He held the barrier with both hands and stood firm. All the arrows struck the barrier. Loud explosions echoed across the arena as the arrows kept hitting it. Lady Allant stood on the other side, watching. The entire area became covered with dust from the explosions. When the dust began to clear, Derrick was still standing there, holding his barrier. He was completely unharmed. Suddenly, Derrick noticed something rushing toward him. It was Lady Allant. She had jumped forward, holding a large ice spear in her hand. She used the explosion as cover and attacked him fiercely. Derrick looked at her in surprise. A point-blank ice spear. At this distance, there's no way to dodge it or even create another barrier. Her talent is incredible. In that instant, Derrick quickly moved his fingers and cast a small spell. A bright flash of light suddenly appeared, freezing the air around them. Allant couldn't bear the brightness. She quickly closed her eyes. Damn it! My eyes! She shouted, struggling to keep her balance. After a moment, she opened one eye and looked around. Where did that bastard go? I can't see anything. She tried to calm herself. Focus, Allant. If I listen carefully, I can react quickly. If I can find his position. Just then, a small piece of magic passed near her. Sweat appeared on her face. Did something just pass by? I didn't hear anything. Don't tell me. Then she faintly saw Derrick standing in front of her. 3 small spells floated around him. Derrick sent the spells toward her one by one. Allant barely dodged them, confused. While watching him, she suddenly realized something. It's a delusion-type spell that removes sound. He even predicted that I would rely on my hearing. Then. That first attack that missed. Anger filled her face. How dare he go easy on me? Meanwhile, Derrick continued controlling his simple spells and threw them at her again. Allant blocked one with panic. Not a chance. Suddenly, her eyes widened in shock. Derrick rushed forward in an attacking stance. He's closing the distance. She thought. She smiled confidently. That fool. Rapid magic manifestation is my specialty. Focus, Allant. The moment magic appears in his hand, I'll cast mine first and end this. But then she noticed something strange. Derrick stepped on the ground, and magic appeared beneath his feet. She quickly jumped backward in surprise. Huh. He's using magic on his feet. As she kept dodging, she noticed the tip of his toes glowing with magic. His toes are casting spells too. Small flashes of magic shot toward her. She barely dodged them under heavy pressure. Finally, she lost her balance and fell to the ground. Her teacher was watching the fight with wide eyes. Impressive, he thought. He seems to come from the school of the wild. But I can't read the flow of his magic. From the perspective of the school of regulation, it's hard to keep up with him. In the arena, Lady Allant had fallen to the ground. She nervously placed a hand on her head and looked at Derrick. Derrick. You are a very interesting kid, she said. Her eyes shone with surprise. Then she spoke honestly. I'll be honest. At first, I looked down on you. I thought you were just a loud liar. She slowly stepped closer to him. Derrick stayed where he was, watching her carefully. Then Allant bowed her head slightly and said calmly. But you showed me something interesting. So. Thank you. She smiled. Suddenly, she used the same type of spell Derrick had used earlier. A small light appeared at the tip of her toe and shot toward him. Derrick stayed focused. His eyes were calm and determined. He quickly raised his hand and blocked the attack. Then he used his magic to catch the spell and swung his hand, sending it back toward Allant. Allant screamed in surprise and quickly tried to dodge it. At the same moment, Derrick jumped forward to attack her. His eyes shone with focus. Allant panicked. Her mouth opened in shock as she saw his sudden attack coming toward her. Suddenly, the sound of a bell echoed through the air. It was Lady Allant's teacher ringing it. Hearing the bell, Derrick's feet touched the ground, and Lady Allant noticed. Derrick respectfully bowed and said, "Thank you for the match." The match ended. Sweat covered Lady Allant's face as she nervously bit her lip in embarrassment. The scene then shifted to the resting area. Lady Allant sat on a chair while her maid handed her a cup of tea. Derrick stood silently in front of her. Holding the cup, Lady Allant calmly said, "You're a splendid mage." Derrick replied, "No, Lady Allant. You're the one with reflexes I've never seen before." Hearing that, Lady Allant blushed and smiled. "Flattering me like that? You must be quite used to this world. I heard you're a commoner, though. Judging by your skill, you must have honed it through relentless effort." Derrick calmly answered, "I had to survive as a mercenary." Lady Allant let out a soft laugh, still blushing. "Save the humility. I like hard-working people. But that old magic teacher behind me. He probably won't like you very much, so try not to get on his bad side." Derrick lowered his eyes but said nothing. Lady Allant took a sip of tea and continued, "Well. Thanks to you, I learned a lot. There's another sparring match at the Rosia Salon next time. I might even get a good result. With your skill, I don't think you have much to worry about." Derrick replied calmly. After placing the cup on the table, Lady Allant said, "Maybe. But I'm not interested in small fry. The person I truly want to defeat is Aisline Eleanor Duplain." Her eyes hardened with determination as she spoke the name. Derrick blinked upon hearing it but remained silent. Lady Allant waved her hand. "I've prattled on for too long. You may go." Derrick bowed, turned around, and began to leave. As she picked up her cup again, Lady Allant thought, "Derrick of the Beldun Mercenary Corps. I feel like I've heard that name before." Suddenly, she remembered, Lady Aisline had once mentioned him. Her eyes widened in realization. Meanwhile, Derrick walked toward the exit. All of a sudden, Lady Allant grabbed his hand. Derrick turned around, confused, his eyes filled with questions as she held on to him. With a chilling smile, Lady Allant asked, "It's you, isn't it? The mercenary who taught Daila?" The scene shifted to Lady Allant's residence. The sun was setting, and the sky had grown cold. Inside, a fire burned warmly, filling the house with comfort. Lady Allant and Derrick sat facing each other. "I'll get straight to the point," she said. "If I can beat Aisline, I'll do anything." Derrick calmly asked, "You want to defeat Lady Aisline?" "Yes," she replied. "Aisline isn't a 2-star mage yet. It would be best if I reached 2-star first, but if I can't, then at least I want to defeat her in the upcoming magic spar." Holding his cup of tea, Derrick said, "You've got quite a competitive spirit." "Competitive spirit?" she repeated with a faint smile. "That's a nice way to put it. For now, you can call it that. But before, I wanted to beat Aisline so badly that I wouldn't have hesitated to do something disgraceful." Derrick looked at her seriously but remained silent. Continuing while holding her cup, Lady Allant spoke in a quieter tone, "Jealousy is dirty and pathetic. I was jealous of Aisline. And it didn't end well. No matter how much I gossiped behind her back or tried to dig up her flaws, she only tried to understand and accept me instead." Derrick paused for a moment, then asked, "Why are you telling me this?" Lady Allant placed her cup of tea on the table and said, "I wanted you to understand my sincerity, even if it meant exposing my shameful side. And there are a few things I want to ask." Derrick, slightly curious, replied, "Please, go ahead." Lady Allant continued, "If you stayed with the Duplain family, then you should know well enough how skilled Aisline is." Her expression grew more serious as she added, "And what my own abilities are like. That's why I'm asking you, what must I do to defeat Aisline?" After hearing this, Derrick paused for a moment. He took a sip of his tea, then calmly said, "It's true that Lady Aisline's skill is at an astonishing level. But you also possess tremendous ability." He looked at her and continued, "If you work hard to refine your skills." As he observed her determined gaze, a thought crossed his mind. Sometimes, you can read a person's heart through their eyes. This young lady in front of me isn't asking for praise. She's desperate enough to seek an answer even from a lowly mercenary. Silence filled the room for a moment, then Derrick spoke firmly, "You can't beat her." Lady Allant remained silent, simply staring at him. Derrick watched her, curious about her reaction. Her lips trembled slightly before she said with determination, "Even so. Even so, I want to win. Even if it's impossible, I will win." Derrick was briefly surprised but said nothing. Lady Allant suddenly stood up and slammed her hand on the table. "You turned that good-for-nothing Daila into a mage. So you can help me defeat Aisline as well, can't you?" Derrick listened, paused for a moment, and then replied, "It's not that there's absolutely no method worth trying. But before that, there are a few things that concern me." Lady Allant sat down again and, with a faint, chilling smile, said, "Now we're getting somewhere." What are they? Lowering his eyes, Derrick asked, first, do you know exactly how I taught Lady Daila? For a moment, he recalled everything that had happened at the Duplain residence, how harsh his methods had been, even to the point of striking Daila or pushing her to the brink to force her growth. Lady Allant calmly replied, I don't know the details. But don't worry. I'll do anything to win. Derrick continued, second, as you know, I'm a mercenary. That means, before he could finish, Lady Allant turned her face proudly and interrupted, is that what you're worried about? That people will talk. That they'll sneer at a noble lady learning magic from a mercenary? She looked straight at him and said firmly. Listen, Derrick. I'm serious. I'm going to become someone whose name will resound across the entire empire. If I can't even take first place in Ebelstein's social circle, that would be absurd. Derrick listened quietly as she continued, placing a hand on her chest. So don't you dare question my sincerity over something so petty. I know very well what matters more than pride. After hearing her out, Derrick remained silent for a moment before calmly saying, no. What I meant is, you'll need to pay me. I am a mercenary, after all. Lady Allant froze for a second. Then her face flushed red with embarrassment. She lowered her gaze, hugging herself slightly as she said nervously, ah. Money. That's what you meant. Of course. I can pay as much as you want. Derrick thought to himself, why does this room suddenly feel so hot? Then his expression turned serious. If she's truly this determined, then I should respond in kind, even if it means using harsh methods. At the Rosia Salon, Lady Eislein was happily chatting with her friends. It seems the upcoming gathering will also include a magic duel, she said. I heard Lady Allant's skills have improved drastically. If that's the case, I should make thorough preparations as well. One of the girls laughed lightly. Goodness, is it already time for another gathering? Another chimed in, then I must participate too. Meanwhile, Lady Allant was watching Eislein from nearby. She soon approached and called out, Lady Eislein is far too humble. Hearing her voice, Eislein turned and smiled. Lady Allant. There you are. Lady Allant returned the smile calmly. We were just talking about you. Eislein added. I know, Allant replied. I could hear your voice all the way from the end of the hall. As the two began walking together, continuing their conversation, one of Eislein's friends whispered to another, maybe we shouldn't interrupt the two of them just yet. Lady Allant smiled and asked, but doesn't Lady Eislein need to participate as well? Have you never tasted defeat before? Especially since you're known as the shining flower of the Duplain bloodline. Eislein sighed softly but responded calmly, thank you for the flattery. Even so, my opponent this time is you, Lady Allant. That is why I cannot afford to be careless. Allant replied proudly, to be honest. I do feel a bit more confident thanks to my new magic tutor. He's just a commoner, but his track record was impressive enough to convince me to hire him. Eislein looked surprised. It's quite unusual for you to personally hire someone like that, Lady Allant. It seems you place a great deal of trust in this instructor. Placing a hand on her chin, Allant said calmly, more accurately, the one who vouched for his abilities wasn't me. But you, Lady Eislein. Me? Eislein asked, confused. I vouched for him? Allant looked at her with a chill smile. Yes. Because my tutor is none other than Derrick. Eislein's eyes widened in surprise. Inside, Allant laughed to herself. Look at that shocked expression. You're angry, aren't you? I bet you're incredibly frustrated. The man you couldn't hold on to is now mine, but Eislein simply smiled brightly. Oh my. Congratulations, Lady Allant. I'm certain you've made a wise choice. You're truly dependable. She even blushed slightly as she took Allant's hand. Congratulations once again. Allant forced a nervous smile. Thank you. Wait. This isn't the reaction I was expecting. Eislein suddenly fell silent, recalling a memory. Why don't you try asking Derrick for some extra magic tutoring? She had once suggested to her sister. Daila. I've noticed your growth has been a bit stagnant lately. If Derrick guides you, I'm sure you'll improve. Daila had been startled, quickly waving her hands in refusal. No, there's no need to ask him for that. I don't think it's necessary at all. Please don't go that far. Because you are someone very precious to me. Back in the present, Eislein placed a hand on her chin, still smiling thoughtfully. Elant smirked inwardly. That's right, Lady Eislein. When you think about it carefully, you must understand what it means that I've taken him from you. Yes, Eislein, let your anger out. I, Elant Alphione Belmiard, have openly stolen your tutor. Eislein hesitated, then spoke. Lady Elant? Derrick is actually a bit, but before she could finish, Elant stepped forward cheerfully. Oh my, is it already this late? I truly enjoyed our chat. She waved her hand lightly. I'll take my leave now. Today is my first tutoring session. With a teasing smile, she walked away. Eislein remained where she stood, confused. It shouldn't be anything serious. She thought. Derrick isn't the type to do anything truly terrible. Nearby, Denise watched the two of them quietly while holding a cup of tea. Taking a sip, she thought to herself, besides. Everyone is just working hard to make a living. The scene shifts to Belden's tier. Inside, Derrick spoke calmly, anyway, I'll put all of that aside. I need to focus on my upcoming job. The master of Belden's rested a hand on his head and asked, the Earl Belmiard family, right? Why does your workload keep piling up like this? Derrick, holding a cup of wine, replied, besides, I don't even need to make a long trip to the Earl's estate. It doesn't matter as long as I can handle it here in Ebelstein's. The master frowned. Hey, you make it sound so easy. But can our young lady really beat Lady Eislein in that match? Derrick answered calmly, it's not entirely hopeless. I still have a way. As long as Lady Elant can break through to the 2-star level. Even if she faces Lady Eislein head-on, we can use the star-level advantage to overpower her and claim victory. The master picked up a large drum and turned slightly. Alright, let's put that wishful thinking aside for now. What's the most realistic plan you want to execute? Derrick replied, that's exactly what I wanted to discuss, uncle. That's why I need your help with this plan. The master looked at him, confused. Derrick continued, to guarantee a safe environment, we'll also need Pelline's help. The master stared at him for a moment before saying, You're planning something reckless that doesn't make any sense, aren't you? Derrick remained calm. Uncle, to be frank. This entire plan is fundamentally dangerous. At that moment, Pelline spoke up loudly, it's extremely dangerous, you know. Those bastards are absolute scammers. She waved her hands in frustration. They completely tricked me and made me suffer. They drained every last coin I had. Both men looked at her. Derrick sighed, then handed her some money. Here. Just use this. The scene shifts to Lady Elant's residence. On the training grounds, Lady Elant stood calmly, listening. Derrick said, first, we will start our lessons in the form of live combat training. This drill will be repeated 10 times. Only after that will I analyze the finer details of your magic. Elant looked nervous. You're really going to throw me into 10 consecutive rounds of combat? I need to observe your actual combat abilities first, Derrick replied. She smiled slightly. Very fitting for your mercenary background. Brutal, isn't it? But that's fine. I didn't hire you to sit around and lecture me from a dusty old textbook. Derrick formed a spell in his hand. All right. If you're ready, we'll begin. After some time, they completed 10 rounds of combat. The training ground was heavily damaged. Lady Elant bent over, hands on her knees, breathing heavily from exhaustion. Derrick said calmly, thank you for your hard work, my lady. Please rest for 10 minutes. After that, we will discuss the fundamentals of magic theory. Elant, exhausted, asked, only 10 minutes. I don't have a single drop of mana left. If you push yourself, I'm sure there's still some mana left to draw from, Derrick replied. She looked uneasy but said nothing. After 10 minutes, the training resumed. This time, Lady Elant used ice magic to create spears. The shape is incorrect, Derrick said. Sharpen your focus and create 10 more ice spears. I'm trying. She replied, struggling, if you can't even do this. What else are you capable of? You are still 5 short. Next, fire 100 more magic arrows. Elant hesitated. I really don't have any mana left. Instead of wasting time making excuses, create 1 more arrow, Derrick said firmly. Time passed quickly, and soon it was dark outside. After exhausting all her mana, Lady Elant collapsed onto the ground, completely drained. Derrick looked at her. You've worked hard this session. You may go and have your dinner now. Then he added, my lady, are you all right? If you truly feel incapable of continuing, giving up is always an option. Elant sat up and laughed. You're telling me to give up after just a little training like this? She looked at him with determination. You gave me some alarming warnings before we began. I thought the training would be grueling, but this is just regular hard work. Looking up, she continued, you can't imagine what I've had to endure just to survive in this cutthroat high society. A little training like this? It's nothing to me. Derrick lowered his gaze slightly. Is that so? Perhaps I underestimated you. Elant stood up again. I'm just a bit tired since I returned from a social gathering. Starting tomorrow, I'll show you my true abilities. With a confident smile, she added, so from tomorrow onward, you'd better increase the intensity of the training. This light warm-up barely made me break a sweat. Derrick looked at her seriously. Tomorrow? My lady, what do you mean by that? Elant blinked, confused. I already told you, Derrick said calmly. Right now is merely your dinner break. Silence filled the training ground. Elant laughed awkwardly. You have quite an unusual sense of humor. Derrick's expression remained firm. My lady, I did not take this job to joke around with you.